We have 1 minute before we start. Thank you all for coming. We will not be taking any citizen comments forms after we start the meeting. Please, if you would like to sign up, please do it now. Thank you. It's 5 o'clock. We're waiting on Mayor Pro Tem, I think, and Mr. Cagle to come back. Let the record show that all council members are present. Council Member Gonzalez is on Zoom. Thank you all for coming out to our council meeting tonight. We will have an invocation by Mr. Edmund Jones and the Pledge of Allegiance by Council Member Boyd. Would you all please stand?
As we bring in all wondering minds and thoughts and think about how good our Heavenly Father has been to us, how He watched over us last night, and then the mercy of grace He touched us this morning and allowed us to rise to a brand new day that wasn't promised to us. So here we are, gathered here to take care of the business of this city. Oh God, we ask you to touch our leaders one by one. Then cement them together in brotherly love, friendship, and kindness. Order their footsteps and regulate their minds. Then, God, give the members that's present in this meeting tonight, God, be obedient, God, be respectful and honor, and be kind and loving to everybody, Father. Realize, God, we cannot do anything without your blessing. We come right now to thank you for the many blessings you stored upon us. Oh, God, we ask you, God, just bless this city right now, God. Bless our leaders, God. Let them know, Father, they cannot do anything without your blessing, Father. Remind them, God, that first, before they do anything, they must first seek your help and your blessing. Then, God, we ask you to continue to walk with us and guide us and bless us. Be with the sick, the shut in, and be bereaved. Then we have servicemen and women stand in arm's way as we stand here enjoying the fruit of life in this meeting tonight. Touch them right now. Be with their families and their loved ones. Keep them safe and return home safely, God. Then, God, as we do all that these hands have been signed to do, when we shall study word no more, God, we ask you to give us a home somewhere in your kingdom where we may be able to praise your name forevermore. These and all blessings we ask you hold in righteous name. Amen. 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 Thank God.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Jones and Councilmember Boyd. As we get ready to approve the agenda, I would like to make a statement. I would hope that the council would take under consideration to table RS-23-093, consider a memorandum resolution appointing a council member to fill the unexpired term for the council member at large vacancy. And I would like for us all to be on one accord and really take under consideration and go back and discuss and relook at all the applicants. Mayor Pro Tem.
I move to remove RS 23093 from the agenda and table RS 23093 until council can meet in closed session one more time to discuss all the applicants before making a final appointment on who will fill the vacant at-large council seat.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Alvarez.
Mayor, I second that motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'm curious how we arrived to this point.
I cannot hear you.
I said, I'm curious how we arrived to this point.
It was my decision that I want us all to relook at the applications and try to come to a majority vote on this. You have the right to vote it up or vote it down. That's the motion on the floor.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sagara.
Just for clarification, are we looking to do this tonight, or are we looking to schedule a different date?
We're going to schedule a different date.
And this is going to be just for council, we're not getting all the applicants or anything back?
No, just council. Thank you. All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Councilwoman Gonzalez, yes or no?
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, would you please read the Governor's Standards and Expectation 180-1D?
The rules of decorum. Rules of decorum. Persons attending city council meetings should observe the same rules of priority, doctrine, and good conduct as they would show in a courtroom, a place of worship, or at any other serious or solemn occasion during which matters of importance are being considered. Visitors will refrain from engaging in chatter, private conversations, and from making other distracting noises while the city council is in session. Phones and other electronic devices should be set to off or silent mode. Visitors should not applaud, boo, clap, or otherwise audibly express approval or disapproval of the speech of another person in a manner likely to disturb the meeting. Addressing City Council. Persons wishing to address the City Council on any matter listed on the agenda may be recognized by the chair, provided the person has completed a citizen speaker registration form and presented it to the city secretary prior to the beginning of regularly scheduled city council meetings or immediately following their address to the city councilors. Speakers should approach the lectern and give his or her name and city of residence before speaking. Speakers shall address the mayor and the city council with civility that is conducive to appropriate public discussion. All public comments should be addressed through the chair. Each speaker will be allowed 4 minutes to speak. A majority of the city council is required for any time extension. A majority vote of the city council is required for time extensions. No person shall be allowed to address the city council more than one time per agenda item. Address the chair. Persons may not engage in discussions with the city council or staff during council deliberations unless specifically asked a question by a council member. Persons who have been asked a question by a council member must be recognized by the chair before being allowed to speak. The chair may end any question and answer section between council members and a member of the public in order to facilitate the order of business. Printed materials. Persons who have printed materials, give them to the secretary to distribute to the city council during a meeting. No disruptions. Persons attending city council meetings shall remain seated or may stand in the back of the room and come and go so long as it does not disturb the meeting. Persons in attendance shall not carry signs or place cards. No person attending the city council meeting shall delay the proceedings or refuse to obey the orders of the chair. Removal. Disturbances, transgressions of the rules or disorderly conduct in the city council chamber or other city council meeting rooms may cause the transgressor to be removed from the meeting. The chair of the meeting should exercise control over persons who disrupt the meeting in the following order of action. A, call the person to order, advising that person of the infraction. Advise the person that the infraction must cease immediately, or the person will be ordered to leave the meeting. Order the person to leave the meeting. A police officer may remove an individual or individuals for disrupting a meeting as authorized by Texas Penal Code Section 42.05. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We will do the citizen comments. Citizens, you have 4 minutes. Council, you have 1 minute, if you would like to respond. Melissa Brown. Good afternoon, you have 4 minutes.
Good afternoon. That was actually a public hearing request, but since I'm here, I don't mind speaking. I didn't get my paperwork turned in before 5 because of some
Ma'am,
scheduling difficulties.
I
However,
apologize. Ma'am,
Mayor Pro Tem Cobb just read off something
Ma'am,
from the
ma'am.
governing standards that said I can turn it in as soon as I'm done talking.
ma'am, I stated that, and I apologize for calling you up here, but I'm gonna let you finish because I made that mistake, and you can have 4 minutes and fill it out.
Perfect. So my whole point is that the mayor for months now has been telling the council, and I can't speak on this because the governing standards were read off out loud to us, but the mayor has been telling us for months now that citizens have to fill that out before the meeting begins. However, the governing standards that Mayor Pro Tem Cobb just read off says either before the meeting starts or as soon as the person completes their speech. So the mayor has not been following those governing standards. Those governing standards are not written on the agenda and is not in those governing standards to read the decorum off to the citizens up front before the meeting begins. Again, I feel like this is a form of harassment and intimidation against the citizens, and I will be speaking about it every opportunity I get if it continues.
Thank you for your kind words. Mr. Michael Fornino. Good afternoon, Mr. Fornino. You have 4 minutes, sir.
Michael Fornino, Killeen resident. With regard to the homeless situation, okay, it's pretty well accepted that we're always going to have homeless. I mean, various religious texts and scriptures say that, but there's no reason that they have to stay homeless. Okay, that's just a condition. It's not a lifestyle. I think that, pardon me, as discussed and brought up here, a fact that I didn't know until quite recently, that we are the 19th largest city in the state of Texas. When you consider that we have 254 counties, that is nothing to shake a stick at. So there are folks in this room, younger folks, who will live to see Killeen have a 250,000 population, people. Okay, we have to start addressing things like this now. We need to come up with a plan now. As I've stated before, and many others, whether on or off the record, the plan of where the homeless shelter and facility is going to be is not in an ideal location. It's too close to schools, daycare center, and it's not located anywhere convenient for them. And by it not being convenient for them, it's no more convenient for them to get out of their homeless situation. Now, a lot of their problems will be compounded. A lot of their problems are going to be far from, I don't have a place to live. I get that. But one suggestion I have, and that can't be the only suggestion, whereas I suggested in the past a Red Lion Hotel, because it is, if we can buy up city property or buildings and repurpose them, I think the Red Lion would be an example of a good solution. I don't have a timer here, by the way. It's not running. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Thank you. I would say that we need to come up with something that is going to address something over the horizon. I mean, a problem that is only going to get bigger. And I mean, we didn't create the problem overnight. We're not going to solve the problem overnight. But we need to have something more concrete, something more tangible. I don't know if there's any people who find themselves in that position in the room this evening who are actually homeless, but perhaps put out a call, since, it's hard for you folks to get in touch with them in normal means that you would regular constituents. Perhaps call a special council meeting just for the homeless. Find out, have them come here just for them. Have a meeting where you can liaise with them, you can get to hear their concerns personally, because I'm not homeless. I can't pretend to understand the weight, scope, and all the complexities of being homeless in Killeen. However, I think it would benefit them, and it would benefit you as the council to actually get it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. What do they need? Obviously, within reason. I mean, there's always going to be a wish list that is never going to be fulfilled, but that's a starting point. I mean, we have the resource officer, have them put the word out, give them plenty of notice, be here at a certain date and time, whatever, and just have a sit down with them, get a better sense from them what their needs, what their wants, what their concerns are, and then come up with a plan from there. I think there's a better way forward than what has currently been presented. And I think it'd be more cost-effective, convenient for us as a city, and convenient for them we offer them a hand up so that they can move on, and we can take care of the next, and hopefully prevent those situations from happening in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Fornino, and I really like your recommendation, and I will follow up on that because I really like it. Thank you. Marcella Cook. Good afternoon, ma'am. You have 4 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Cagle.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. Sorry about that. I wanted to speak about the homeless situation. I myself have been homeless. I lived in my van for 3 years, one of which was in Killeen. And last year I was homeless. I voluntarily left my apartment due to harassment and threats from the management's employees. Literally left everything I own. Everybody's saying, there's resources, there's housing lists, everything else. The housing list, 90% of the time, is closed. There's no way to get on the housing list. Trust me, I've tried. I'm still trying. Because my landlord's not going to renew my lease, I'm going to be homeless again in 2 months. I have nowhere to go. There's no accessible housing in Killeen, unless you want to pay like a couple thousand a month or whatever. But it's more than I can pay. And to get on a housing list, you have to be homeless. In order to be homeless, it's illegal to be homeless in Killeen. You get tickets, you get citations of, trespassing, everything else in Killeen. So how are we trying to help the homeless if we're trying to make it illegal to be homeless and also move them where there's no resources? There's no bus line where you want to move the shelter. There's nothing around there. At least downtown where the shelter is now, they can walk to resources and everything. They can walk to the bus stop. There's no bus line out there. So how is there any resources for us? Michael Fornino spoke of the outreach team. Again, 90% of the time, the officer is so busy. The one officer on the homeless outreach team is so busy, he doesn't return calls because he's so busy. He has so much to do. I've literally had to catch him in the street in order to get any information to him. If you want a homeless outreach team, at least make it a team, more than one officer. At least make it so that he's not overworked, because he is very overworked right now. He is so busy all the time that you literally, he can't follow up on that much stuff because he has no time for it. He has to do everything else. And again, when you ask for help, there's no funds, no resources, no nothing. And then when there is resources, it's only for a select few or this community or that community. And then, like, I know of an instance where they were told there was 3 beds available in a drug rehab or something of that sort. When they called about it, it was only 1 bed and it was taken. So there's a lot of misinformation given to the officer, and it's just so many dots that have to connect that we can't connect.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. Assistant Chief Gerhardt, could you please come to the mic so I can ask you some questions? I know the city is working hard to assist with our homeless population, which is a part of our community, and there are some things that could happen that we're not aware of. And one of the concerns is the process, and good evening, sir, I'm sorry about that. I was just making a general statement as you walked up. One of my concerns is I heard that they're being ticketed or arrested if they're homeless. I don't want any more misinformation out there in the community, and you being the expert in this field, and you work closely with your officer, the outreach homeless officer, and I know he's overworked. So can you try to address some of the concerns so we can get the right information to the residents?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't consider myself an expert, but I'm glad you think so.
I do.
I can speak to a few of a few of her concerns. One is we don't cite folks for anyone for trespassing. We either warn or arrest. And I think maybe there may be some confusion because the warning, when we give somebody a warning for criminal trespass, that's done on the same form that we would issue a citation on. But it is just a warning for criminal trespass. And those are only done at the request of the property owner. We try to move them to public areas, but when they are loitering or camping and leaving trash on private property and the owners request us to move them, we're obligated to do so. And so that's when we give those criminal trespass warnings. When we've been called out for a specific person, or we've been, time and time again, they've told us anytime you see them, we don't want people camping on our property and littering on our property, that sort of thing.
And that's private property?
That's on private property, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
As far as our homeless outreach team, that's a team of primarily one, Officer Kraus. He does amazing work. He's kind of blurred the lines between police officer and social worker, and he's kind of taken that position and made it his own. But we do have another officer, it's Officer Woodard, who has cross-trained with him and fills in for him when he is not. He is the primary homeless outreach officer. Officer Kiva Woodard is his backup. So she does that on a part-time basis, and she's embedded in the community engagement unit as well. So we're trying to expand that within the resources we have, obviously, because we still have the police mission to accomplish as well.
Right, and the resources, do we pass out resources from the police department? And if so, are there a need for, to increase the budget for more resources to assist?
Oh, absolutely. Resources are finite. Now, Officer Kraus does a very good job of utilizing the resources he has. On a daily basis, he is handing out packages of care, basically care packages, including toiletries and things of that nature. Now that it's hot, he's carrying cases of water around in his car, and all day long, in the afternoon, in the hot hours of the day, he is passing out water to the homeless folks so that they're not getting overheated. Just trying to stave off any health concerns, doing the best we can with what we have. We have a very good amount of community support, so we do get some donations in that Officer Kraus is able to access, and we use those donations for things like helping them get certified copies of their birth certificates, getting a driver's license because they need those documents so they can get jobs and get housing. We have also purchased bus tickets for these folks, and after he confirms that there's a family member on the other end of that bus line, when we sent somebody to New York last week, but Officer Kraus was in touch with that person's family, confirmed that they were on the other end, they were going to pick this person up, and Officer Kraus put them on the bus, and that's what we use some of those donation funds for. So again, we do the best we can with the resources we have. Obviously, more resources, we could do more things with them, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's a question from Mayor Pro Tem Cobb.
Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
sir, thank you.
Hi, you're welcome.
Excellent resources, but I have a question for you.
Sure.
If it's 103 degrees outside,
Mm-hmm.
or 100 or more, where do we take our homeless population? Do we have a resource for them to be in a cool facility?
We, as a police department, do not have that resource. Obviously, if they're hot at 3304 Community Boulevard, they're welcome to come into our lobby and cool off. But we don't have that would be a city resource for us to set up maybe like a cooling center, kind of like we do in the winter for the heating, the warming centers. But that's a little bit out of my lane.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to have it,
Mm-hmm.
that resource.
Yes, ma'am, I agree.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, and this is just something we have to look into, the resources, and also Mayor Pro Tem concerns before the heat get any worse than what it is.
It's already upon us, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Oh, thank you,
Good,
you're so
thank you.
kind. Thank you so much. Madam Secretary?
Presentations.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Presentations.
PR 23014, Citizen Survey Report presented by Robert Heacock.
Good evening, Mr. Heacock. Our Communication Director will be speaking first, and that is Mrs. Janelle Ford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Manager, and Council. So last year, Council gave a directive to conduct a citizen survey, and we were able to secure ETC Institute to conduct that survey. And we are fortunate that we were able to do it because it is a scientific survey. So it's something that you can take back as leaders and you can devote your time to and look into devoting budget dollars to whatever comes out of that. So it's very imperative that we get this survey. And so it's leaders across the country, they are making decisions based off what citizens want, of course. And a lot of times, leaders across the country are going off of Facebook, Instagram, those types of comments, when really survey companies across the country will tell you that those who comment, especially the negative ones, only represent 5% of your population. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Haycock, and he is in for those who saw the agenda, he's in for Esther today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Nash King, members of the council, Mr. City Manager. It's a pleasure for me to be here to present the results of your most recent survey with ETC. ETC Institute is located in Olathe, Kansas. If you're wondering where that is, it is in the backyard of the defending champion, Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Just thought I'd mention that. This evening, I want to go through the survey and give you a feel for, first of all, who we are. The dots here kind of represent some of the surveys that we've done. We've surveyed more than 3,000 individuals across the country since 2006 from 1,000 cities and 49 states. If anybody has a connection in Honolulu, I'd be glad to do a survey for them and travel there to present it. Let me see here. I was told that I have to... Equipment malfunctions are always interesting. Is it? I think here it has to be on, right? There we go. So our agenda this evening, I'm going to go through here pretty quickly. If you feel the need to stop me, please feel free to do that as we go through, or you can also hold questions, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the end. So we're going to start with the purpose and methodology of the study, kind of give you a summary of the bottom line up front, what our points are, major findings, and a summary, and then, like I said, questions. So as Janelle stated, the purpose is really to have a scientific study so that we're objectively assessing resident satisfaction. So you're not just hearing anecdotal evidence from people or people who claim they represent other people, but you're able to look at really in a scientific, objective manner to understand the pulse, so to speak, of the citizenry. We want to compare the city's performance to other communities, so tonight we'll be showing you how your results stack up against a survey we did for Texas, a Texas-wide survey, and then a national survey as well. We're going to also help determine the investment priorities in the community, kind of go through a lot of different ways to show the data, not only what's important, but how the citizens are and whether they're satisfied with the particular services. So the methodology, we had a 6-page survey, which took about 15 minutes to complete. We administered it in March through May. We had a random sample of households throughout the city. We had 529 respondents. That gave us a confidence level of 95% of precision, plus or minus 4.3%. That's really, really very good. And usually the standard is 5%. So if you have a precision level that's almost at 4%, that shows you had a lot of respondents. So that would tell me that you're engaged with your citizens, that they knew this was coming, they were looking for that, and that they responded very well. A lot of times it's difficult to get those responses. We didn't have that problem here. People here were very happy to share their opinions, and we're glad they did, so that it gives you the best data possible. Oops, excuse me. So the bottom line up front, generally folks had a pretty positive impression of the city of Killeen. 78% were satisfied or neutral with the overall quality of life here. And several of your categories of service were higher than in other communities. We're going to show this in a little more detail going forward, but 3 points here. One is the city rated significantly higher than the Texas and U.S. averages in 6 out of 14 major categories of service that were compared. So in almost half of the categories we're comparing, Killeen was significantly higher than the Texas average and the U.S. average. You also rated 15% above the Texas average and 4% above the U.S. average for fire services. And then when it comes to ambulance services, you rated 18% above the Texas average and 9% above the U.S. average. So those are all very positive things, things going well. People running those programs are doing a good job of meeting the needs of the citizens, and they have a very good perception of those services. Your highest investment priorities will be street maintenance, police services, and code enforcement. So major finding number 1, we indicated the residents had a really mostly positive perception of the city. Now these are going to be I apologize, but these slides do get a little busy and it's a little bit difficult to read. But what I wanted to point out here before we start getting into specific responses was kind of the coding here. So we have dark blue, light blue, gray, sort of a pink color, and then a dark red. What does that represent? That represents the spectrum of responses. So in most of the slides you're going to see, we're going to ask about satisfaction. How satisfied are you as a citizen with fire services? In this case, the dark blue shows very satisfied, the light blue is satisfied, gray is neutral, and the other 2 colors are dissatisfied and very dissatisfied. Now in a lot of the slides, you'll see the red numbers actually combined, but I wanted to spend a moment on the neutral, because you'll go through here and you'll look at that and you'll say, boy, we really need to focus on capturing all of those people who are in the dissatisfied or very dissatisfied and how to flip them. I would suggest to you, after working with ETC for quite a while with a lot of clients, the first step might want to be is focus on the neutral. Find those areas that you have a large group of people that are neutral. Why? They went to the trouble of filling out your survey. They didn't ignore the survey. They didn't say don't know. They actually said, I'm neutral. So that usually tells us they need more information and they're open to things, but they're not really registering a judgment because they don't have enough information in most cases. So that's a fertile ground for you. It's part of a communication plan, perhaps, to how to reach people. And you'll see this as we go through. There may be dissatisfaction or perceived issues with certain services, but the reality is people, don't know that you've already made you've started initiatives to address those issues, but people don't know it. So pay attention to the neutral area. I think that's an area that it's easier to take somebody who is in a neutral area and flip them to positive than it is to try to, especially in the dark red. It doesn't mean you ignore the dissatisfied. I'm not saying that, but I just wanted to give you that perspective. So what you can see here, if you can see that well, is that at the top here, the most satisfied services with very little to no dissatisfaction is fire services. Ambulance services, trash collection, and even sewer services are very positive. At the bottom, you'll see street maintenance. at the very bottom, but I'll show you later, you're not alone. You're right at the average of Texas cities in terms of street maintenance. So it's an issue across the board for most cities in the state of Texas. You see youth programs, municipal golf courses, code enforcement. Those are other ones that are down to the bottom with a more significant level of either the neutral or dissatisfied. This question is, how satisfied were you with the customer service received by city employees? So we see here, the first aspect at the top was, were you directed to the correct department? Did you feel like you called and you were told correctly where to go? So you had a good chunk of folks, almost no, I think it's perhaps about 11% that were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied, but most of your folks responded that they were very satisfied or satisfied. Same with the courtesy of the people. The issue that I see there at the bottom where you might want to have further discussions on, and that's really what this survey is beneficial to help you do, is it identifies starting points of conversations. It's a point in time, so we need to remember that. It's not a be-all, end-all permanent indictment of a city service or anything. It's just an opportunity to see, oh, okay, people are not really happy about this. What can we learn about that? So it says at the bottom, the city followed up to ensure my concerns were addressed. And you see a good portion, 36%, over a third of the respondents said, I'm dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the city followed up to ensure my concerns were addressed. What we've found in other communities is that it isn't really an issue of the city following up or not. It's the communication back to them to say, hey, we did respond and let them know that exists. I have no idea whether or not you have a customer complaint process that, now technology can close that loop. Other communities have done that. If you haven't, it may be part of a discussion you want to have is, okay, what's our overall process of intake of consumer complaints or citizen complaints in this case? And how can we make sure that they know that we made an effort to address their concern? So just wanted to point that out. That you see that fairly frequently, that the issue is people are dissatisfied with follow-up, but it's more they don't really understand that there really was appropriate action taken, or why action couldn't be taken in some cases. Level of satisfaction with public safety services. Again, we touched on the fire department before. Those are at the top there. The top four are all listed in the fire department. Then you see some concerns, but realistically, with the police department professionalism, you've got 14% of the respondents said they were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. That's not a huge number compared to some other communities. I know it sounds like you want that to be zero, okay? We want every interaction to be professional, but the reality is that's not going to happen. There are going to be some people that are not happy with the professionalism, but look at that gray area, neutral. You had 24% that are saying, I'm neither satisfied or dissatisfied. And then at the bottom, you have crime prevention. Crime prevention is going to show up later on, too, in some of the responses you have. In fact, I would say I think you are significantly behind the national averages in only a couple of areas, and that's one of them. Again, there may be a lot of things going on in crime prevention, but you have to ask yourself, is it that we're not doing things, or is it that the public just doesn't get the information to know if we're doing the right thing? Sometimes it's telling the story. Cities are not always the greatest at patting themselves on the back and taking credit for the work that they do. So you'd have to engage your police department, and I understand you have a new chief, and do discussions about, okay, exactly where are we with some of those issues. Now we're going to look more in depth at some of the comparisons that I mentioned to national and Texas results. If you are plus or minus 5% off of both of those averages, you're going to see a blue arrow as positive and a red arrow as negative, and no, that has nothing to do with national politics and colors, reds and blues. I actually had that question by a council member once. So we'll look at that first with the major categories of city services, and look at that. You have a lot of blue arrows, no red arrows. That's very positive. Now, I suggest you look again, street maintenance. When we look nationally, satisfaction with street maintenance is at 41%. You're at 25%, and that's a roundup. If you went to the earlier slide and you said, wait a minute, Robert, that adds up to 24%. It's because when you combine them, you're going to catch any residuals. So in this chart, it brings it up to 25%. But you're right at the average of Texas, for Texas communities. But a lot of those very positive areas for water service, utility collections, that's one that you don't normally see communities kind of standing up and beyond others, but you're well above the national average and the Texas average for those. Animal control is one and recycling seem to be a couple of those where you're significantly, again, lagging behind some of those other averages, and you can kind of look at the others there too. Code enforcement comes up as a priority, and you can kind of see why you're at 30% and the Texas average is at 37, the national average is 42. This looks specifically at the value of city services. So we want to get away from just how happy are you necessarily with this particular service or that particular service, but we want to understand kind of that esoteric question of how do you value what you're doing? Are you getting value for your tax dollars? Those types of questions are what we saw here. So this slide shows that the overall quality of customer service, remember we talked about that before, customer service being an area of opportunity, but look, you're still significantly higher than the Texas average. I mean, you're 22 points higher than the Texas average, and you're significantly higher than the national average when it comes to overall quality of customer service. Doesn't mean stop doing that, stop doing what you're doing, but it does put it in perspective. Overall quality of services provided by the city, again, you're kind of right in line with them. You're within that margin of error. The value of my tax dollars and fees, wow, quite a bit lower in terms of what they perceive. Again, I would submit that it might be the story rather than the reality, but it's a starting point for you to have as a discussion with citizens and with your staff. But that definitely could come up. Now we're looking at public safety specifically, and you see the blue arrow for the fire department. Again, you saw that earlier when I said that they're significantly higher than those other averages in terms of the rating. Now you can kind of see that graphically, significantly higher than the Texas average. Police department speed of response to emergency calls, you're kind of right in line pretty much with the national average. You're above the Texas average. Traffic enforcement, that's one that's lagging behind a little bit. And then you look at that one I'd mentioned, crime prevention. So that's perception, right? We don't know what really necessarily informs that. It might be somebody who's a victim of crime. It might just be somebody who is hearing a lot about potential crime, but that, make no mistake, is something that folks in your community are looking at. And to be that far below the Texas and U.S. averages would signal to me that's an opportunity for further conversation and focus to kind of find out what's going on there. Now we're going to move on to kind of the priorities for investment that we talked about. And one of the things we at ETC have done is we've created an algorithm that combines and looks at a couple of different things. So it's one thing to ask your citizens, how important is something, right? How important is that service to you? So in a lot of cases, we give them a list. In this instance, for this slide, we gave them a list of 20 different city services. We said rank them top to bottom, which is your most satisfied would be 1, your least satisfied would be a 20. Then we asked them, what's the most important to you? And again, they had to rank those 1 to 20. Somebody might say, well, I'm least satisfied with skateboard park availability in the community, but it's bottom in terms of priority. So just going by how satisfied people are is not necessarily a blueprint for directions for you to follow. You want to put that in the context of combining those. So that's what we at ETC have done, and we've created a rating, a formula and a number that identifies priorities for communities as high, medium, and low. Again, doesn't mean that some of these that may be in the medium priority, like animal control or recycling, those rated in terms, pretty dissatisfied, right? You had animal control ranked 14th, city youth programs ranked 19th. But the reality is they weren't necessarily as important as the others. So the top 3 are street maintenance, police services, and code enforcement. And those rank 1, 2, 3 in importance, and street maintenance ranks 20 in terms of satisfaction. So not only is street maintenance the number 1 most important item to your citizens in terms of those surveys, but they are the least satisfied with that category than any other. So I hope that makes sense. Let's move on, and I'll show you this in another study. So this looks more specifically at other city services that weren't captured before. So it's a smaller list, so we have 1 through 8, in both importance and satisfaction. The high priorities that came out were providing a safe community, planning for future needs of residents, and keeping residents informed about city business. So those are your top three, and you can see there that the keeping residents informed about city businesses, it's interesting because it has the highest satisfaction rank. Okay, of these items, they're saying the city's efforts to keep me informed is the one I'm most satisfied with, and yet they don't want you to rest on those laurels. They want you to continue to inform. They want to continue to feel that being informed is a priority, and that's why it ranked 3 out of 8 in terms of your priorities. You have providing a safe community as number 1, and then number 7 in terms of satisfaction. So they are very unhappy with, dissatisfied, I would say, compared to these other services with providing a safe community. It is their number 1 in terms of most important. And finally, we'll move here into public safety services. And again, you had a list of services. This was 10. So for each of the most important and for the satisfaction, you'll see that ranking. Look at crime prevention. Crime prevention is the most important and the least satisfied. So absolutely jumping. They're telling you not only in the earlier areas where we said how satisfied are you with crime prevention, they're telling you they are the least satisfied with that, and it's the highest priority. So clearly, street maintenance and crime prevention are things you're going to want to have follow-up conversations with if you're going to try to align your investment priorities with what the citizens are telling you. Because I do a lot of these, and it doesn't always happen that they jump off the screen like these have. And so to me, it's very clear. Traffic enforcement is also pretty high on the list, obviously. And it doesn't mean these other items aren't important. We're just trying to find a scientific way, if you would, mathematical way to kind of identify that for you. And then finally, we look at parks and recreation services. And the overall issue there was overall safety of parks. So again, we had only 7 items that we're comparing here, but they had the most important item in parks that we had listed, and the least satisfied was overall safety of city parks. Other findings. Would you consider the following issue to be a major concern, minor concern, or not a concern to your neighborhood? So really we looked at what we got was, is it a major or minor concern was what was in this. So condition of major streets leading to your neighborhood, condition of streets, and street lighting were all above 80%. Another question we looked at was in the past 12 months, we understand there's been a lot going on with the airport, with United stopping their service there. By the way, I loved your airport. I thought it was really easy to get in, and I'm hoping it's easy to get out tomorrow. But I thought it was really great, and a lot of community pride shows through from the displays and things that you have there. I thought it was really, really pretty cool. I've seen a lot of airports, and I liked your airport. In the past 12 months, have you visited or utilized Killeen Fort Hood Regional Airport? The dark blue is visited, and the light blue is took a flight. So you had 62. So about 2/3 of your residents say they've flown out of there in the last year. How would you rate the overall impression of the airport? Again, the dark blue is excellent. The light blue is good. The yellow or orangish yellow is fair, and the poor is the pinkish red color. So you had a very only 3% that said it was a poor impression, and but you had 82%, over 83% really of your citizens say, hey, we think our airport looks pretty good. It shows pretty good. We like our airport. Now we look at a question, what is your level of support for an increase in your property taxes to fund? So hypothetically, nothing's going on any ballot anytime soon, but just we wanted to test the water and get some feedback. How would you feel about funding something like this? So dark blue is very supportive. Light blue is supportive. Again, that neutral, you got a lot of neutral. And then the pink and the red are very unsupportive. So the 3 areas we asked about were additional public safety personnel. You had 66% or 2/3 of your residents say they're very supportive or supportive of additional public safety personnel, with 19% being neutral and only 15% being unsupportive or very unsupportive. street improvements. Now, this was interesting because you remember that's the number one priority, but there's not the same type of majority saying, yeah, I'd be supportive of an increase in property taxes to fund street improvements. So you have, I mean, you still have a significant number. You have 56%, so you have a majority that say, but it's just not as strong as what you see up above. A little bit more on the unsupportive side too. Which when we look at these, a lot of times clients will look at it for their community and say, well, we want to use this as a basis for a potential bond issue or tax issue on the ballot that we're going to go out for later. I would tell you timing is everything too. So, this is just that point in time, how people feel today. It doesn't mean how they're going to feel 6 months from now on this particular issue. And then finally, recreational facility programs doesn't seem to be as much interest, but you do look at, there's 29% that are neutral. So you have a large group of folks in recreational facilities and programs that are saying they're neutral. That's probably due to the nature of the question, because park goers are going to resonate towards things that they utilize. So if you're saying, I want more athletic programs and fields, or I want more senior programs or more youth programs, that's going to drive down that neutral number, because people will understand a little bit better really what the focus is. It's pretty clear for most people, adding additional public safety personnel, what that looks like. But when you say recreational facilities and programs, it's not always really all that clear. Then we asked, what is your level of support with the following possible downtown improvements to be implemented? And the number one issue in terms of support was street lighting. And you saw, I think, street lighting came out in your findings in neighborhood safety as well. A lot of times when I do that, I think you need to have a conversation with the electric company or whomever and find out, okay, how do we get more street lights for public safety and property values really too. You can make an argument for them. It's good for the utilities to invest in street lights because it's going to make people feel safer. Less crime is going to result in, higher value properties and people with disposable incomes who are going to, pay ultimately there and grow with additional housing. Sounds like you need. So street lighting, increased police patrols downtown, and providing for pedestrian-only areas, along with construction of art or museum facilities. Thought that was very positive, that you had a lot of communities don't really resonate when we start asking questions about art or museums. They glaze over, but look, you have a very strong interest level in terms of level of support for our future investment in those areas. 68% said they'd be very supportive of construction of art or museum facilities. Then at the bottom, you do have some folks eliminating off-street parking. I don't know exactly what's contemplated there, but that looks like a tough road to go on with such a 30% of them already saying I'm unsupportive or very unsupportive. Which of the following sources do you utilize to gather information about your city business, and events? Number one is the city website. So that is not always the number one. Water bill inserts, newspaper, government access channel. I know we want to believe everybody's tuning in to watch all our meetings, but they rarely are they. But you do have a fair number that do. And look at city council, 7% of the folks say that I'm utilizing, they can have more than one answer. But 7% of your citizenry are saying, that may not seem like a high number to you, but it is, to say that they're relying on information from city council members about what's going on. That tells me you're invested in the community, you're out there as a group, you're telling people what's going on and asking opinions like this. Not every community is trying to engage their community, and you have. So that doesn't surprise me. In summary, again, this is just kind of restating the points before, and I won't read through all of them. You don't need that. But again, the highest investment priorities, street maintenance, police services, and code enforcement. But also crime prevention was one of those that really should be looked at in addition. With that, I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. And it was how many? 500?
528.
28.
Which doesn't sound like a lot out of 150,000 people, but statistically, it's very significant.
Yes, sir. And even if it was 10 people, their concerns are a concern. So that's not the problem. So when you talk about safety, crime prevention, maintenance, and code enforcement, I know that our communication department as a whole, they do get out a lot of information. And the council, I think majority council members do have their own website or Facebook page where we share that information with the community. Safety is our top priority. Crime prevention is our top priority. We know there are some concerns even among us about how we are going to address that. And we're giving our new police chief, Chief Lopez, the opportunity. He just got his feet on the ground. He's running though. Maybe not as fast as some people would like him to run, but he's just getting the feel of everything. He has some great programs, and we know that we made the right choice in choosing him. And the team that we had in place, our prior leadership, and also with Assistant Chief Gearhart and Donahue and the police officers, they're working their best. And we're trying to get more police officers hired to assist because they work overtime. They work long hours, and then they do community outreach. They do a lot of great things. And we had the concern about the homeless outreach program, where we only have one officer. Do we need more officers to work in that? We do. We have our community engagement team that's downtown with one sergeant and 4 officers just in our downtown area, just trying to ensure that the parks, because they do drive around in the parks, because what's the point of having parks if our residents are afraid to go there? And we're investing through our department, Recreation and Park Service, our Executive Director, Snook, and her team are really pouring into our parks. So that is significant for us. Our council also talked about code enforcement. That's one of the things we talked about during this budget process, that we do need more code enforcement officers. But as you know, everyone knows, you only have one budget, and priorities, we must take that under consideration, because we still have our first responders, our fire department, that we have to take under consideration. So I can agree with everything except one. Our maintenance, Public Works Department, the maintenance team, they have been working hard. They go out, they put up signs, they send out everything through, just my perspective and the feedback we get from our residents, the council, through emails or whatever in the grocery store, just period. But they have started working and have been working extremely hard on our roadway. Overlays, just redoing streets. That department has gone beyond to put out signs once they complete a project, because we did raise the fees for maintenance fee for our streets, and you can see the signs up. We completed it. This is your tax dollars at work. So they do an excellent job, and I don't know how we can do what we need to do to get it out more to the public, because our communication team, as I stated, and department head, each department head is constantly trying to rotate in our newsletter on what they're doing and how we're doing it. And I am truly grateful that you brought this to us, because these are some of our concerns, and it just proved the areas that we need to really tighten up in. And we're grateful for our new police chief and also our assistant police chief and the police department as a whole. They do great work. And also our fire department. And I know they scored high, but we need more personnel there in that department also. Across the board, though. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, but once again, thank you to Councilmember Sagara. Bless you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And we appreciate you. It's a good report. It kind of reassures for most of us what we kind of already knew. And I know, as the mayor said, a lot of that is perception. And from our angle, from the leaders of the city, we know what's going on, but I think you hit it on the head. A lot of time, and what the mayor said, a lot of times it's that communication, getting that information out there. And I think that, it's good to know that at least our street maintenance and all, it's got a positive. And that's something that the council focused on. It took like 10 years to get that. We got a separate funding mechanism. we focused on that, and we're still only in the beginning of that. And I think over time, people are going to, that I think is going to change. I can pretty much bet that. And it's going to be more positive because as we accumulate, the funds needed through our street maintenance fees, I think that's definitely going to improve. But it just goes to show that, it's our responsibility as council to figure out a way to make that happen, because I know that we do have great people, great staff, but a lot of times it's just figuring out a way to fund it. And it may not necessarily be through taxes, and I know that. I'm glad to see that, that's a high priority for most citizens, which is public safety, but it may be other creative ways to figuring it out. But I appreciate it. But I did have one question, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I think I took that survey, and there was something missing there.
Okay.
And I think it said, what would you like to see the airport named? Was that on there?
I don't know. Apparently it was not.
There was a survey, and I took it, I put in there, because it said, what would you like to see the Killeen Airport named? Under the airport.
I inherited this because I'm not Esther, the person on your agenda, but I don't remember it. We just had to weed it down for a presentation.
Oh, got it.
We can look into the survey itself.
No, sir, that was a separate
Oh, was it
survey
separate?
from aviation, yes.
Got it. So my confusion, apologize, but I thought that was part of it when you were bringing
Okay,
that airport.
okay.
But great presentation, I appreciate it. And just one last question.
That explains the one vote they have for Sagaro as the
There you go, that's
the
what
vote
it is.
for the name. Okay.
That's it. I was the only one that voted for that. But because when you break down the public safety, and I know they kind of go in line, but you said like people are concerned about crime prevention. And I know that, me, what I do in my business, when people are looking for quality of life, they don't say, what is the statistic for crime prevention? It's always like, what is the crime rate? So I think that, because of that, because of the crime rate, maybe that's what resonates when it comes to the crime prevention. Because, we're asking, we need crime prevention, but I think they're looking at overall, the crime rate, not just.
Certainly one, as you said, Councilmember, one feeds into the other. I would agree with that.
Yeah. All right, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to first thank all the citizens who participated in this survey, giving us this data to where we can understand where the challenges are and where we're actually doing fairly well. The council prioritized this about a year ago. We couldn't get it through fiscal year, I think 21, but through 22, and it's good to have these results for us to work with. I just want to point out a few things. The 55% citizens getting their information from the website. That's a result of our communications team. So, Ms. Janelle Ford, thank you for that. That's a big deal. Most cities, citizens don't get their information from the city website. The 3% of the airport, outstanding. Aviation department on that one. I did want to highlight that there was just satisfaction on the fire department as far as professionalism, speed to response to emergency calls, customer service. The same with the police department in regards to professionalism. And it was also interesting to me to see where the citizens are with support in the form of increase of property taxes in relation to public safety, street improvements, and recreational facilities. So I just thought this was great data that for me to take away from, and also not to mention the 68% demand, if you will, for arts and museums here in our city. That says a lot. And it also suggests that the citizens want to see more things that they can go out and do in the community. So thank you for the survey and the information.
You're welcome, sir.
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions were actually covered, so I appreciate the council and thank you for that presentation, sir.
Thank you. So once again, we thank you for presenting that to us tonight. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Mayor. And if I could make one final comment, I understand what you're saying, and it's very true in most cases. There's a lot of efforts, and this survey, and I don't think the survey results are a direct reflection on specific staff members or the jobs that they're doing. It shouldn't be perceived that way. But if you know that you're doing a lot of work in certain areas, and what you're doing is often what I see a response to this survey. You're already ahead of the game by putting signs out, letting the public know what work you're doing. I've also worked with clients who said, hey, we're now projecting 2-3 years out what streets we're going to overlay so that people know in their head, okay, I know my street is a mess now, but I know my overlay is coming. Any of that information that you're talking about, Mayor, is really helpful. And I'm glad you have such a positive attitude. Obviously, all of you very supportive of your staff. But you're right, staffing is not always the answer, the only answer. A lot of times it's partnerships. Like you're dealing with tonight, it wasn't on the survey, but the issue of homelessness is a matter of coordinating efforts with different agencies and churches, make sure who's feeding on these days, and who's doing all of that. But you all are very involved, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thank you for your thoughtful questions. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir, and there's always room to improve. There's for improvement, but we also already start putting on our website the overlays and what time your streets will be worked on. We have worked with that. We also have an app where if you have a problem in the community, something break, you can just text it in. But the problem I think it is how do we get everyone connected to our website and our resources where they can find everything, because some people do not get a utility bill, or they don't have internet access, or they don't go to Facebook. So it's just us coming together and coming up with ideas on how we can work with communication staff and department heads on how we can get all the information out to the residents.
Yep.
And I think, Mr. Cagle, do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, ma'am, I had one thing, but I think Ms. Gonzalez did have a question.
My hand is raised. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You hit the nail on the head, actually, with regards to how do we connect more of our citizens to these surveys, with our population being at around 160,000. What suggestions does this company or do the survey companies have maybe for getting more involvement or engagement with regards to our citizen population?
Be diverse in your approach. Don't put all your effort in just one method of communication, and try different things, because some communities, and to reach certain populations, you have to think differently too. Certain communities having town meetings of council members going out and meeting with people. It used to draw a lot of people. Now you try that, it may draw a couple people, and they're the ones you've already heard of, and you're really wanting to hear, no disrespect to them, but you're trying to hear from other folks. So I would just say be open. I know you have a very creative communication team here. Been very impressed with Ms. Ford, the work that she's been doing. And I think just have those conversations with your departments as well, because they may have ideas of how to reach the people that they're serving and how to inform them. And then lastly, look at partnerships. Don't be the only ones trying to carry that message, but how can you work with the schools? How can you work with the Chamber of Commerce and other groups to inform them so that they can take those? It's a matter of getting the word to as many people as you can to disseminate the good things that you're doing. Clearly, a lot of work is being done. It's just perception hasn't caught up with reality yet, and that's your challenge, I think, at this point.
Yes, sir. And just by you saying that, it made me think about our community events that we have downtown on our revitalization team, Ms. Kay, Mr. Lavalis Hamilton, Mr. Edwin. We could set up a table and promote information, because we have a big turnout for those events, and we have the 4th of July coming up, so that's another avenue that we can use.
Absolutely. Trumpeting your success. It's something, I know a lot of people think that, well, politicians, people who run for office, they're all focused on that, but it's not. They're focused, when you say brag about it, you don't want to be bragging about yourself, but you have to. We have to encourage people to brag about the accomplishments that you as a council have made and that your staff have done. Otherwise, people aren't going to get the word if you're not out there positively trumpeting your successes.
Yes, sir.
So,
thank you
very
so much.
much.
Anything else, Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Thank you, madam. I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor.
Mr. Kagan?
So the last time we did a citywide survey, I believe, was 2009. So our plan from now on is to do this every other year so we can see how we're doing. And the street maintenance is a great example. Although we're devoting a lot more resources, it's going to take a while, and until people see those streets that we're going to reconstruct, that they've seen a lot of overlays and they're nice, but until Ransier, Bunny Trail, Gilmer, Stagecoach, all of those streets are reconstructed, it's going to take a while to make those numbers move. But the good thing is, we do have a plan to make a move and dollars behind it to make a move. So, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
sir.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir. Madam Secretary.
PR 23015, Rodeo Killeen Community Request for Funds Presentation.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I was going to introduce you.
Okay.
Welcome
Hello.
back.
Hello again. I just wanted to introduce, everyone knows Mr. Brett Gordon, the co-chair of the Rodeo Killeen, and his team has done a great job partnering with the city for several years. This year was the 76th annual Rodeo Killeen, and we've had about 30 staff members from police, fire, emergency management, building services, mowing and drainage who volunteer or work for those events. So we just really appreciate all that you've done for the city of Killeen, and we appreciate our staff who participate each year as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Honorable Mayor, esteemed council members, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight, as well as your continued support to Rodeo Killeen. As she mentioned, I co-chair the rodeo with Mike Adamson. Tonight, I would like to brief you on our after-action review and economic impact statement at the rodeo from May 18th to the 20th. But first, let me just start off by saying what our mission statement is. Rodeo Killeen is a volunteer-supported 501c3 nonprofit community organization that preserves and promotes the Western heritage, values, and traditions within our community. We do this by hosting an annual pro rodeo, and Rodeo Killeen is dedicated to support and honor the three major forces that make up our city by providing free Western-themed entertainment to our military, our educators, and our city employees. Additionally, Rodeo Killeen serves our community by leading the annual canned food drive to support the Killeen Food Care Center. First, let me state, this year's rodeo was a huge success. We added 2 new events this year, the first one being women's professional breakaway roping and mutton busting for our youth. I think my full report, you've had that, so I just want to talk on a few highlights. So first off, we had about 14,200 patrons this year during the 3 nights. That's an increase of about 2,000 over 2022. The estimated economic impact was just over $1 million, which we saw that as an increase over the previous year as well. We had 383 out-of-town support staff and competitors. That was an increase of 183. Now, 182 of those were women. Professional women athletes. So that topped the male athletes. And there's only 2 events for women, 6 events for male. You do not see those numbers in our size rodeos anywhere. So this was a new thing we added and had a tremendous response. We were able to feed, with the help of AUSA and Big House Barbecue, we were able to feed about 1,400 military families at the barbecue on Military Appreciation Night, which is always a great event. Our beer sales, let's see. Our beer sales went from last year $8,860 to $21,000. I will tell you that Military Appreciation Night had the highest sales. Not surprising there. But one of the things we're really proud of, as most of you know, in lieu of purchasing a rodeo ticket, a person can donate 4 canned good items and receive a free ticket for any night of the show. This year, our canned food drive brought in about 6,500 pounds of canned food items to donate to the Killeen Food Care Center. What was really interesting is when we got all those canned goods together a couple days later and talked with the Food Care Center manager, he said that Killeen Food Care Center was completely out of canned food items, as well as the Capital District Food Center, which distributes canned goods to the Killeen. So in this region, we had the only canned goods coming into the Food Care Center, helping our citizens here. One last highlight that I didn't have here is that we've implemented this starting this year, and we just presented a scholarship to a young lady that will go off to Tarleton State in the fall to pursue a degree in veterinary medicine. Rodeo Killeen did this in the past, but hasn't done it in about 10 years. So we've implemented that, and we look to expand that scholarship program again. So, I always want to ask for something. So we're requesting $30,000 for 2024 rodeo. The purpose of these funds is to add to the purse for the 8 rodeo events we host. The intent of this added event is to attract top-tier professional rodeo athletes to compete at Rodeo Killeen. Currently, because of the rodeo season, we are competing with a lot of other rodeos to get those top-tier athletes here. For those that don't know, these athletes will compete during the rodeo season to try and win the most money, not just to, of course, make money, but the highest earning cowboys go on to compete in December at the National Finals Rodeo, basically the Super Bowl of rodeo. So they're looking at where are the top rodeos I can go to compete and win to get into that National Finals rankings. So this is the intent that we're trying to do to get these top tier rodeo cowboys here. As we mentioned before, we give a lot of freebies away at this rodeo to our military, to our city employees, to our educators, and then we waive approximately $35,000 to $45,000 a year for our canned food drives. So we're trying to get that, try to balance that out without getting away from our mission statement. The expected outcome is we anticipate a significant increase in spectator attendance, particularly with our out-of-town spectators. Now, 2 years ago, I had a bull rider named J.B. Mooney come to Killeen. J.B. Mooney has won $7 million riding bulls in his career. He is like the rock star of bull riding. I had people coming from Texarkana, Waxahachie, Wichita Falls, coming just to watch him. And we get these top tier athletes, we get the out-of-town people that are going to come here, stay here, spend their money here. That is pretty much all I have for tonight. I stand by for your questions or comments.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you and your committee for everything you have done for the city of Killeen, because that's something that most families that are in rodeo have the opportunity to participate. And what I like about it is free, really, if you just bring 4 cans. So I thank you for that and your continued service in our community. Councilmember Sagara.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Mr. Gordon, for that. I had a real good time at the rodeo, so I think, and I witnessed a lot of what you're talking about, and it's good to know that the staff of Killeen did not outdo the beer for military. That means, we're doing pretty good here.
They were too busy working.
That's what it was, yeah. But I just wanted, last year, how much money did you get from the city last year? Do you remember?
I think it was, I think for the, getting from the city for the rodeo,
Yeah.
we didn't get anything.
Oh, you didn't get anything?
No, sir. We did get a grant or a repair of the stadium seating.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that was the only thing,
Okay.
to my knowledge, that we received from the city.
And I was going to ask you, because you mentioned the economic impact, and I think you kind of mentioned it towards the end, because what I was going to ask you is on our hotels, I don't know if you took that into consideration of how many of our hotels are utilized for the rodeo. And,
I did not do that research. That's one of my things to do
well,
next.
and you kind of mentioned at the end, people, if you have a big person, big person that rides bulls, you're going to get that attraction and people coming as far as Texarkana. That's huge. But my question was going to be to our city manager, because when we fund something like that, if it does our hotel, does the funding come from our hotel motel tax? Does it come from our arts grants? Does it come from the general fund? What are we looking at?
I think this would qualify in the hotel motel. It's just the question is going to be what process we put it through. Does it go through the arts funding, or do we do it separately? But I think it's a very appropriate hotel motel expenditure.
Yeah, because I kind of see it falling in either or. I mean, you're doing both, but I don't have a problem with it. I'm good, appreciate it. Thank you, and I look forward to next year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I attended the rodeo 2 years in a row, and I had a great time, great attendance, like you stated, and just great bull riding to watch. The one thing I asked about at this facility is how we could potentially, in the future, improve it, and I was asking around, and I learned that a canopy would be great for the arena to host future events in the future. So I just want to put that out there, put that on the radar. I know that won't happen anytime soon, but I think with this being such a large draw for our city and it's growing, that continued improvements be something we consider. I know we did the seats, which were great, but this is our rodeo grounds we've been doing consistently for decades. So that'd be great. I did also want to say, thank you for your leadership, with the rodeo, you and your the co-leader, and also just wanted to mention that the level of the mission and a level of inclusion, make sure our soldiers, our students, teachers, everyone's involved. I think that's great, the mission that you guys are pushing for this, to make it affordable for people and have that opportunity to participate. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sir, the rodeo is always a nice time for families, and kudos on the rodeo. But what's most important to me out of the rodeo was that you were able to give to that food bank so that people and families would have food, and someone received a scholarship. We've got to get some more scholarships out of the rodeo, because I know that was a proud moment. So thank you for the rodeo, but most importantly, feeding families and students going to school. Hats off.
Thank you, ma'am. And it wasn't a hard sell to implement that scholarship, because most of us on the board greatly support the scholarships, and we're involved in other scholarship organizations within Killeen, other youth organizations.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think what you didn't say, I served on the rodeo committee before I came on the council, and one of the things that you do not see, and he will not brag about it, the amount of time it takes to set up everything, the people that have to come out and I'm just being honest, the sponsors having to put all the signs up, get the hay, everything. Is so much hard work behind the scene to put on an event for our community, for 3 days. And also, they allow youth to come out and ride on the horses and everything. Schools, all you have to do is coordinate that. And there's some more great things that they do that we don't see, the community don't see throughout the day, and how they make it such a success. Like, it's so, like, easy, but it's a lot of hard work and a lot of hard volunteers. And hats off to our city staff that go out every year and participate. Some of them volunteer, like our police officers, our EMS, our fire department. They're always out there in that hot sun throughout the day, ensuring that everybody is okay. So hats off to all of you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you for that. Just so you know, we had our first meeting last
I
night to
didn't
start
go.
for 2024.
I know I didn't show up. I'm working on that. I'm working on it. My schedule's really busy, but I will be there. I promise. The next one, Councilwoman Gonzalez. You have any questions, ma'am?
No questions. I just want to say thank you for continuing to bring our community together for good fun, for a good cause. I mean, this is awesome. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir, so much.
If I could just add one thing.
Yes, sir, sure.
So what we're trying to do is, instead of having the rodeo arena used once a year, we tried it last year. We had 2 other events, and it was women's barrel racing. It does bring dollars into Killeen. It's not a big spectator event. We use it as a fundraiser to help acquire funds to run the rodeo. But now we're looking to do that at least once a quarter. And so that puts the rodeo arena being used more, which is a fee for the city, that the city gets, and brings those other people from out of town into the city. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank your committee for all you do. Citizen petitions. Madam Secretary.
CP 23015, Melissa Brown, Killeen homelessness situation.
Thank you. Melissa Brown. Welcome back, ma'am. You have 4 minutes.
Just a second to sort through my notes here. Passing something along for the council to review, and I have another copy of the flyer here for after I'm done speaking, if the citizens would like to look at it. I hate it when they put this over here. I can never see you, Councilman Alvarez. All right. So the city of Killeen has been both discriminating and criminalizing the homeless. I only hear negative stigmas, which only makes it easier for people, including this body, to not care about these neighbors living on the street around us. So let's see how much of the visual there is. It says that the city cares about our homeless population. All vacant buildings in downtown Killeen are on automatic CT, or criminal trespass, which is a Class B misdemeanor. This means that as soon as somebody is found sitting in one of those entryways, loitering in front of a building, or perceived to be loitering in front of a building, they can be automatically arrested. This is part of the vacant building registry for downtown Killeen, and all Class B arrests are currently getting transported directly to Belton, where a person has no transportation to get back to Killeen, where their belongings are. Their animals, even healthy emotional support animals, are seized and euthanized or adopted out. Their only company and their only safety taken away from them. They have no ability to go into the main branch library and cool off anymore, because it is now plastered with trespass warning signs that caused even me to sit and think, what does official library business actually mean? But those same signs are not existent on the south side of Killeen at the Copper Mountain Library, which tells me there is one singular intent for them being at the main branch. If you noticed at the last couple downtown events, we don't have any benches in downtown Killeen anymore because the homeless were sitting on them and sleeping on them and lying on them, and it became a detraction to business owners and to the potential business owners. And granted, it is not what people want to see, but it is a stark reality of the people who live around us. They are still our neighbors who live around us. We still have no electricity at the park pavilions unless you pay to rent them. This has been discussed multiple times, I know. I was on the council when this was discussed with the city manager, with a couple of the council members up here. But if they were to have electricity, they could at least plug in a little portable fan, charge their cell phones. Which, by the way, if they can't charge their cell phones and an emergency happens, how do they call for 911? So the homeless community, and there's no cooling center, I'm sorry. So there is no place for these residents to go at all unless we want to open up City Hall and let them come in here and stay. So where do we want them to go? The homeless community needs your help, not just bottled water. In fact, my recommendation is using reusable water bottles. They can be filled at parks and many gas stations. They reduce trash, and they are less for our neighbors to carry. The citizens and community stand in the gap, though, such as at this event, which all of you are looking at. Let's start investing our existing resources into what we already have in the community instead of millions for a program that doesn't exist yet and is inhumane. When you look at the details of our existing homeless plan, it is inhumane. This isn't how Christians or people of faith are supposed to treat the vulnerable and the less fortunate. So my question to each and every one of you is, what are you going to do to help, and how are you going to make a difference? What will be done to address any of these issues I brought up tonight?
Are you finished? Oh, your time is up. Thank you.
I was just seeing if Ms. Cobb had a question for me before I walk away.
Oh, no, I have
Thank
no
you.
question for you, but what I do want to say to you
Thank you.
is that we are caring citizens and we are working towards. Even with your program, I've done it for the last 10, maybe a couple of years. I missed the last 2 years on the COVID season. And it is a great program where people come and they give socks and they give many things for those families who are needed. But please, I can't just say this enough to anyone. It takes everyone. And until we're a community that have the resources all together and we're out there, then it may occur. But never think that we're not working towards making person lives better. Even with the question about the cooling center, I was told tonight that Moss Rose, they allow people to come in and sit and cool off during the summer. And so maybe it's not a regular program. Maybe it's one day out of a week. But if you just give a little, a lot of people can be served. So we have to take the little that we have and work with it. So know that we're working.
Tuesday lunches at noon, Saturday mornings at 9 a.m., and tomorrow is a special lunch.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, discussion item.
Madam Mayor, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Boyd.
Sure, this is actually for the city manager. It's in relation to the homelessness. Someone actually reached out to me today and mentioned that Friday's going to be, incredible heat. And if the city was going to consider opening the shelter, not the shelter, but partnering with Moss Rose on Friday. And I just thought it'd be a good time to ask and see where we might be with that.
I'm not aware that we're doing that right now, but I will look into it. I'm not sure who told you we were partnering with them.
Well, no one told me they were partnering. Oh. They were asking if it's possible for us to do something like that for the heat.
Sure. This is the same discussion that we had right. over the warming center. Mm-hmm. So it involves taking park maintenance employees or some other employees that are not qualified to do that to staff it. But if that's the direction, I will certainly look into it.
Okay, thank you.
And just
thank you, Councilmember Boyd. Thank you, Mr. Cagle. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Madam Mayor, I have
Do
a
you
question.
have a question for Ms. Brown?
I did have a statement, and, this is, and thank you, Councilwoman Cobb, Mayor Pro Tem Cobb, for your statement. This is a very complex issue, and so thank you for bringing this, to the forefront. I know that we do care, and we are working diligently on different fronts. But again, I cannot say this enough, that this is a huge call to action for every single service provider within the city of Killeen and surrounding areas to help. This is truly a community effort. While it can all lie on the city, we do have an important part to play, which I think we've been diligently working collectively to get there. But this is a community effort that we need to help our neighbors and come together and help the people that are providing the services that are doing great work already, but cannot do it alone. So again, I'm just going to put that out there on the record. This is a call to action to all of our community service providers and community partners. Please, if you can, reach out to the people who are already doing the work and offer your assistance and partner where you can to help us make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Perez. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I was just going to see if there were any questions about cooling centers.
Okay, I do have one. The cooling center, how are we going to operate it during the heat?
So again, the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management is based off of disaster services. So large-scale disasters, our high heat plan is based off of the heat index, not the temperature. So our plan activates when the heat index is 110 or higher for 3 days or more. So though, yes, this entire week is one of our first weeks in Texas that we're in our area experiencing 100 degrees or more, this is not to that disaster level. This is just, unfortunately, Texas life. So we always work with Moss Rose. If they have any requests, we've let Moss Rose know that if they choose or anybody chooses to open a cooling center and offer their facility for people to come and, cool off, give them bottled water, that type of thing, that's certainly not something that they have to come to our specific office about. But they do have those options. Just to kind of echo Councilwoman Gonzalez's point and many others, is we have so many churches, we have so many nonprofits. If all of them were to partner together and maybe schedule things together of who's feeding on this day so that we don't have 15 of them doing the same thing on the same day, then that effort would go a very long way.
Yes, sir, and thank you so much.
No problem.
Madam Secretary. Consent agenda items.
Madam Mayor, we have a discussion item.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion item. DS-23-63.
Yes, ma'am. Discuss and consider a letter of appeal regarding the denial of a parade permit for Songhai Bamboo Roots Association.
Yes, ma'am. Chief Kambinski. Ms. Golden. Does she speak? Do you have something to say for Ms. Golden?
I think we ought to let the applicant
Okay,
go-
yes,
go first.
we'll let her go.
Thank you.
Ms. Golden, if she's not here?
She is right there and has
Ms.
asked me to
Golden.
speak on her behalf.
She can speak on your behalf. I just wanted you here in case the council had questions directly for you.
Thank you, Council. Songhai Bamboo Roots.
You have 3 minutes. I apologize for that.
I'm sorry, this is, there's no
I'm sorry, that's
limitation.
council. Council has 3 minutes
Oh.
to speak 3 times each. I couldn't finish it. That's all I was trying to do, finish it, the
Thank you.
discussion.
Songhai Bamboo Roots is an organization that educates, mentors, and promotes community youth through a variety of cultural events, arts, and classes. Before talking about the appeal in question, I did have a question asked to me last week about this, and so we would like to first have our historical expert explain why a trail ride is relevant to Juneteenth as we do feel that that is a relevant piece of information for the council in considering this. So Ms. Phyllis Jones has done the research on this.
Honestly, I don't know that addresses the issue is safety. Whether a trail ride on W.S. Young has any historical precedent or not doesn't go to the safety issue, and that's the reason for the denial, and I think that's probably what we ought to stick to tonight.
The ordinance in question that defines how the appeal is handled allows us to call any witnesses or bring forward any information that we feel would help to convince the city council about why they feel they should honor the appeal.
Right, and that's what I'm talking
It's the
about.
relevance of the event.
No, ma'am, it's not relevant to the safety of the event.
But it is relevant to the event itself, and the council can always overrule and request additional public safety be assigned to it.
Council, Mr. Cagle says it's irrelevant. Ms. Brown, speaking on behalf of Ms. Golden, say it's relevant. What is your pleasure? Do Ms. Jones speak or not? Ms. Councilmember Boyd.
Bless you.
Councilmember Sagara. To go over the history.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Solomon. Councilmember Alvarez. Councilmember Gonzalez.
No, ma'am.
You said no or yes?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we have 2 to say no and 4 to say yes. Mrs. Jones, you can come speak. Good evening.
Great rising to the council. The history of trail rides, I think everybody up here should know. But anyway, it goes back to, in Texas only, it goes back to 1850. 1850, as you know, there was the Southern Underground Railroad. I know you know that. But using the trail ride, which was covered wagons, got the slaves in Texas to Matamoros, Mexico. The covered wagons were used in the trail ride way. Slaves were covered up with cotton and whatever else they were disguised into using. But trail rides were started in Texas then for Africans that became slaves. That was their mode of getting through the Southern Underground Railroad. And that is the history of it, from Texas.
Thank you. Now can we get back to safety? That's why the appeal, the decision was made by the staff. It was a safety issue. So can you continue so we can address what the DS 23-063?
Thank you. In addition to that, this was meant to be a visualization and demonstration to the youth of what it was like for slaves having to be taken via Underground Railroad, and then learning 2 years late that they were actually freed men and women, and being able to publicly and openly ride through the streets and celebrate, play their drums, play their own music, and celebrate their culture publicly. I think that is extremely pertinent for the council to consider when thinking about the importance of a trail ride. We would also like to point out that other cities around the state of Texas do trail rides, and they regularly bring in thousands of individuals every single year to their cities, even if that is the only event that is happening. Since this is a program that is being sponsored by the Arts Commission and Arts Grants, every person that comes into Killeen and as a tourist and stays in our hotels has an impact on Mrs. Golden and Songhai Bamboo Roots. The cancellation of this or the denial of this petition actually puts this at a hardship for the organization. They've already put money out for the program, the reservations for entertainers, started selling tickets, started drawing down on grants. I know that our pro tem will understand that once you start drawing down on those grants for the art grant program on the Arts Commission, it's very difficult to just do a full stop and reverse step on that. We would also like to acknowledge that there were several other alternatives that were offered by the city and why they were not acceptable to Ms. Golden or the organization. Option one was to move the ride downtown and partner with other organizations and be provided with their own vendor stations in conjunction with someone else's event. This doesn't work for multiple reasons, including the needs of all three organizations to be able to account for visitors and receipts. Songhai Bamboo Roots, given that they do receive art grants, cannot accurately report their number of attendees and receipts at a combined event. Option two was to use the Andy K. Wells Trail to have the horses on the grass and walkers on the trail. There are 3 wagons that are integral to this event. They would not have been able to be used on the trail and would have had to stay on the parking lot, which would have taken away from the point of the visualization that Ms. Golden was trying to get to with the trail ride being organized the way it was. Option 3 was to move the trail ride to the parade route. For multiple reasons, there is no such thing as a dedicated or established parade route for the city of Killeen. There is one that we know that is used for various parades that the city sponsors, but the city has also approved different routes to be used for parades, marches, and other events that utilize the roads. The KCCC Special Event Center Rodeo Grounds had already been paid for by the time that this application was denied also. This would make it a logistic impossibility for them to transport all the horses and riders to the downtown route, unload everybody, do the parade, load everything back up, and transport them back to the Special Event Center. And then option 4 was to make circuits around the interior parking lot of KCCC. This was perceived as insulting, and in asking the organization to essentially stay out of view and away from the main streets. These are the options that were presented. These are the reasons why they were not accepted by Mrs. Golden. This event was approved last year when the Arts Commission grants were approved by the City Council. When the City Council approves them, they are essentially saying they support the event that is presented. The same way that the City Manager says that purchases are automatically approved as part of the City Council approving the budget. The 2-day event has been on the calendar since February, and other events that were both approved and denied for this weekend were submitted after the arts grants were approved. One of the reasons that was listed as to why this couldn't happen for safety is because there were other events already approved for this weekend, and it was stretching our public safety resources too thin. However, the City Council, by proxy and supporting the grants to go to this organization and to this program, had already approved this before any of these other events were submitted. And as noted last week in Killeen Ordinance Section 25-158, it requires approval or denial within 7 days from the city manager. That would have allowed this appeal to come before the City Council before the 11th hour, before we were at the last minute, and allow for Mrs. Golden, the city manager, the City Council to have a longer, more in-depth discussion about what would be acceptable and how it could work from a public safety point of view. I do know that the staff has some other things to say on this, and then we would like to just be able to close by making some requests and some suggestions about what we've found.
Would you please do everything now? Because once they finish, the council will have discussion. It's not going backwards and forward.
The ordinance says the applicant opens and closes.
Well, you can finish now, because, I mean, is that true, Mrs. Clemens? Because this is going backwards and forward.
So the ordinance that Ms. Brown is referencing when we actually have a hearing that's scheduled at a different date. However, I mean, the procedure that she's referencing is if you set a hearing for a separate date and a more formal hearing. However, you could abide by that open and close that is in the ordinance.
I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry.
We don't have time for a separate date. The event is Friday, so This was the only way to do it in this
Well, I
instance.
want to go by the ordinance, and I want to be, like you stated earlier, Ms. Brown, holding us accountable and doing the right thing, and I don't want to break it. So what happened?
The procedure that Ms. Brown is referencing is if the council decides to set hearing for a separate date. So the ordinance allows the council to hear this appeal the day it comes to you, or you can set a hearing, a more formal hearing on a separate date. The procedures that have been outlined by Ms. Brown are referencing, are required. They are requirements of the ordinance if you set a hearing for a separate date. However, I do understand what she's saying is that the timeline here doesn't allow for a separate
Okay.
hearing to be
I
scheduled.
just want the council to understand. Okay, council, what the city attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, we're speaking, Ms. Brown is speaking now, and she was saying if we want to do a second date to have this, repeat it one more time.
Okay, there are no set requirements for how this hearing goes if you're hearing it today. So you can allow her to open and close, or you don't have to. If you were to set a separate hearing date, then there are specific outline procedures for a separate hearing.
Okay, got
at
it.
which attorneys are involved cross-examining
So
witnesses. things
basically,
of
you're
that
saying
nature.
today, if we do everything today, it's not she start and she close, if we do it today. Or we have the option to let her start it with her comments, hear from Chief Kambinski, and then close, she has the closing remarks.
You could do that. There's not a set procedure for today.
Okay. Council, any recommendations on what you want? I'm sorry, Councilmember, no, you got another question. Councilmember Sagara?
I just want to get clarified, because I think the safety issue, because I appreciate and I love the history and all that, and I think it would be a great event, doing that, but always, because we're liable as a city if something happens, and I just want to get clear on the route that you got, because I heard W.S. Young, and I know W.S. Young is a busy road, but is that correct, where it's on W.S. Young, from where to where?
The proposed route would be leaving the Special Event Center, turning right onto W.S. Young, turning right onto Elms, turning right onto Tremere, and then turning right down Bacon Ranch before entering back into the rodeo grounds.
Yeah, so I think that's, because I appreciate the event, but on W.S. Young, I think there's a lot of safety concerns there. My office is just down the road, and I can tell you right there by W.S. Young, just by Lowe's, there's always, it's a lot of crazy people there coming in and out of that. So I think that having a hayride in that road could create, big issues there.
I'm glad you said that, because there are two things to point out for that. One, I think hayride is slightly a mischaracterization. This would be the Rough Riders coming out with their horses that are trained, that they do parades and they do trail rides with on a regular basis. There would be 3 wagons. One of them would be the Rough Riders wagon itself. The second one would have the band members belong to Ms. Golden's organization riding inside of it. It would be enclosed so that they wouldn't be able to fall out. So they could play their steel drums as they were riding. And then the third one would be a performer that's coming in from out of state to perform and be able to ride along and play along with them. I also wanted to, along those lines, point out that when this application was first submitted, that was the same route that was proposed. And Ms. Golden was told that she would need 2 police vehicles, 1 to lead, 1 to trail. And there has been confusion, and this is why we wanted to be able to hear from staff before making any closing remarks, because there has been a lot of confusion as to exactly how that changed and what was said in order to say it would have been allowable by the city or not, because Mrs. Golden and the organization still have many questions regarding that. So we wanted to be able to hear that before coming up with our final argument for this situation.
And just one more thing, Mayor, and this is for Friday, at what time?
From 2 until 7, 2 until 8. Yeah. 2 to 3:30. Oh, yeah, the trail ride itself was only 2 to 3:30, and then there was some youth events and activities that were to follow.
Yeah. Because I think the only way I can see that happening, we'd pretty much have to close that road down. Because that'd be the only way that you can eliminate, especially during the afternoon, on a Friday afternoon. You'd have to just close that road, and that's gonna make a lot of people upset, so.
So, but that was why we wanted to be able to hear from staff as to what their recommendations were for safety before coming up and making that final argument for Ms. Golden's behalf.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mrs. Golden, you have been on the Arts Commission for over 6 or 7 years. And as I have sat with you, and I respect that, I respect the events that you have. However, it is a safety, ma'am. When we think about our information and our books, if it's not done beforehand, then we can't tag it on. W.S. Young is just hot traffic. If we kept it in, I could see us keeping it in the rodeo place, but to our staff, who we depend upon, our police and our fire chief has told us that it is not safe. The event as is, they have given you that information. As an arts commissioner, what do you see different? I don't want to hear Melissa's words. I want to hear your words, ma'am. Please.
What do you mean by what do I see different?
Why is it so important that we have to go down W.S. Young?
When I first put in the grant, I had to actually do the research to find out, and the individual that was working with me was Kathy, and she retired. She made sure that I got all the pertinent information. Her suggestion was I had to first get permission to be able to use the rodeo grounds. Even though it was city property, they said some other organization maintained it. So I actually did all of that. And it was always in place, even when I went to the Arts Commission. That route was what was being stated. And at the time legal was there, no one said anything about it. So at this point in time, I'm like, why the change all of a sudden, at the last hour? Because it was already in place when I actually got the approval from the grant. All of this was stated at the meeting.
I get it, but when you hear our chief and when you hear our police chief, the safety of having kids and horses and kids trying to get the horses and run out to the horses and W.S. Young in between 2 and 3:30, I think if it would have stayed within the grounds and maybe in that parking lot, it would have been safe. Mrs. Golden, well, Commissioner Golden, the reason why is because it's just not safe. That's just point blank. The ideals are great. I love the activities. But when there's unsafety, we can't do it. It's a liability for us. And I'm sorry that someone's...
I asked a question
Yes, ma'am.
about kids, and they told me it wasn't the issue of kids. They stated that it was actually just the traffic itself, and I informed them that the group that was doing it, this is what they do.
I get it, but Commissioner Golden, what happens is sometimes people who don't have expertise in a subject may say yes, and when it goes to the next department or those person who is over public safety and over that department, and they look at it and then they say no, and that's all that has happened. It's not a damper on your activity, because as Mrs. Phyllis read her history, that's the reason why I wanted to hear the history, that it can still be told and it can still be shown, but just not on W.S. Young, ma'am. That's the only thing.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Alvarez. I apologize. Councilmember Gonzalez, your hand was up first.
Thank you. I do have a question, and I appreciate the history that was revealed regarding this, but I just want some clarity regarding this, the proposal. So my understanding was the actual event was approved, and then there was the submission of the trail ride that was added after the fact, if I'm understanding correctly. But irregardless,
No, that's
was there an
incorrect.
Councilmember
okay, thank you.
Gonzalez, I think Ms. Golden was shaking her hand to answer your question. She said it was incorrect. Can you give us, it's still you have the floor. Can you, what happened, Ms.? You have to speak in the mic.
The trail ride was always included in the application. Once I got with individuals that were experts in the field, they were telling me that it would have been too much to have them both on one day. So I went back in January and asked the Arts Commission, could I only separate the trail ride for that day, for it to be the date of the 16th. But then first, it was the 17th. Both events was going to be hosted.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Understood. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gonzalez, you have to have your camera on when you're talking.
Yes, ma'am.
That was just brought to my attention.
Thank you. Let me figure out how to get this camera on.
Oh, you want me to come back to you?
No, ma'am, I'm ready. Thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it. My second part of my question was, were there any alternative routes, understanding the safety and issue with regards to that particular track of the trail ride? Were there any alternatives given to the trail ride, and what were the applicant's thoughts on that?
Does the councilwoman want us to repeat them? Because those were the ones that were read off at the beginning of the discussion.
Councilwoman Gonzalez, can you repeat your question?
I'm curious as to why the alternative routes were not approved.
So I think that
She's asking Ms. Golden.
The reason why the alternative routes weren't approved because it would have took out the wagons, the covered wagons. It would have took out the trailers that the youth was going to be riding in, and it would also took out the party wagon that the artists would be riding in. They wanted us to just set that in the parking lot.
Yes, ma'am. Did you hear that, Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Understood. Thank you very much.
if the mayor would allow.
Thank you, ma'am.
If the mayor would allow for a moment, I
Council,
think
Ms.
that
Brown, I
police
have the
chief- fire
floor.
chief could-
I have the floor. Thank you. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm sure some of this will be answered once we have staff comment on this. I guess my first question and my disconnect, looking at everything that was provided and hearing everything that's been stated to this point, and there appears to be some confusion, I think, as to what was approved in the very beginning. I heard comments talking about the trail ride was always part of the event, so I don't doubt that. I take your word for that. I think the confusion may have arisen from if you said, I want to have this event and I want to have a trail ride. And they're like, sounds great. But was it specific? Do you have a specific application showing that they approved W.S. Young as your route? So they may have said yes to a trail ride, but did they say yes specifically to W.S. Young, a 5-lane road with horses and kids and separated by traffic cones from cars going 40, 50 miles an hour? That is, I think, it may be the disconnect for me.
What was approved in the
Can you
very
speak in the
beginning?
mic, please? Because they're recording it.
What was approved in the very beginning was June 17th Trail Ride and Southern Soul Showcase. What I presented to the Arts Commission was the location where the trail ride was going to take place, because they wanted to know in detail all the information regarding that. So I had told them the trail ride would take place off of staging area, the special event center, the rodeo grounds, and then we'll move out from there and actually go down W.S. Young, turn right, and they were all right turns, and coming back.
So
Two police officers said that that's all we needed as for an escort.
Did the Art Commission approve this or staff?
The Arts Commission approved it.
All right, Councilmember Alvarez.
Okay, so that answers my question in part, I believe. So the Arts Commission is tasked with approving the event and helping to issue those funds. They don't have say-so over police officers or firefighters or EMS or city streets. Their part is the money part.
Right.
And they said, okay, sounds good, we're going to give you the money. And I agree with what Mayor Pro Tem said. It's a great event. I'd like to see it happen. So it's how do we get there to a way that gets you what you want, but is going to do it in a safe manner where we're not putting anybody's lives in danger.
Well, I understand that.
I think there has to be a happy medium where you're happy, the people who are attending the event are happy with the turnout, and the city feels that we are minimizing the risk of somebody getting hurt on a city street. So I don't see why we can't get there. I know that there was different options thrown out, and none of those seem to be exactly what you wanted. So I don't know if there's a way that we can look at maybe a local street versus an arterial road, where it's a neighborhood road versus a 5-lane arterial road that has lots of traffic on it. Maybe we can still move it. You can have the trail ride. I think there has to be a way to make it work for you, and I certainly want to do that. We have to be able to do so responsibly, because we have to also answer to the citizens who are driving on the road, and if they were to, I hope it doesn't happen, but hit somebody that's part of the event, we don't want to go into it knowing that we could have prevented that, so.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Solomon.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is really a good event, but I'm really ready because staff was ready, said they would, from the last workshop, they said they would be ready to make a presentation. So I think staff would clear everything up. And so if we could hear from them, that would be great.
Because I have one more person. Councilman Boyd, you okay with that? Okay, so are you finished? Because you still.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So we have Councilmember Boyd, because he has been waiting, and once he finished, and let them say what they have to say, I bring staff up. Councilmember Solomon. I bring them up. Yes, sir. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be quick to the point. I share the same sentiments as Councilman Alvarez, Councilman Cigar, and Councilwoman Cobb. It's about safety. We're talking about W.S. Young. We're not mentioning Tremere, let alone Bacon Ranch Road, which has poor visibility around that corner behind Walmart. And if we're talking, that's 2 lanes, not 3 or 4 to 5 like we have on W.S. Young and Tremere. So I definitely have concerns about the safety there. Councilman Cigar made a good point too about citizens being upset that those roads would not be accessed. I believe we'll have issues with a ton of stuff. So this particular route, I'm concerned about safety. I just want to make sure I communicated that. Thank you.
Thank you. So do you have anything else, Mrs. Golden? Do you want to say anything for Melissa take over?
Yes, yes. I understand the issue about safety, and we're all about safety, and the group that was doing is all about safety. The majority of these men that's in the Rough Riders, they retirees, just like myself, and they have rules and guidelines and bylaws and everything. So their main thing was safety. A lot of them have 30-plus years, so for them, this was actually an insult when I presented it to them, and I didn't want to present it to them, but I had to be fair and open and honest and transparent with them. And I told them that it was reduced to them going around in the parking lot. When that happened, it's over. They were like, man, I'm a retired sergeant major. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel. I'm this, I'm that. Why are we going around in the parking lot? And this is what we do. So that in itself kind of like just stopped everything.
Yes, ma'am. So I have one question. I haven't had an opportunity to ask you a question. Are you still going to have the trail ride?
I'm not having a trail ride. I've already posted that we're not having it. What I'm here for now is clarity. Clarity moving forward for 2024, because I still want to do the trail ride. You know, I want to do it. I submitted my grant for 2024. I don't want to have the problems that I had at this last hour.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
there's a time frame that once the grant is approved, do I got to go to the police department? What's the procedure? Because I've done the Caribbean Afghan Festival for the last 16 years, and there was no designated parade route. I put in parade permits, I put in assembly permits, and we would do a parade in the park. You know,
So who told you there was not a designated parade route? Because we do have one downtown.
Where is that in writing?
It doesn't have to be in writing. That's the parade route that they have been using. So that's something I will make sure you get some clarity on it.
Yeah,
And I'm
but-
glad you
but
made
my
it clear.
clarity now is
That's
just-
what you want, clarity.
I want clarity
That's
moving
right.
forward for 2024.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm glad you spoke up on that. Anything else? Because I'm getting ready to call the chief up. Do you
So-
have anything else, Ms. Golden? You have anything else to say? Melissa Brown?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So there is no dedicated parade route. I can point to 4 instances where this city manager sitting in front of me has approved other routes to be used outside of the one that the city primarily uses. That is the city's primary parade route that they use, but private organizations have been allowed to create their own parade route for as long as I have lived in Killeen.
And Ms. Golden, we would have done that for you too if you chose that route. So she want clarity so we can get the chief up here.
So
Anything else?
I think that was where I was going to try to wrap up with, is that Ms. Golden, unfortunately, because of this, the city manager, having denied it at such a late minute, had no option. She's had to cancel the trail ride for this year, which has put the organization in a very large financial hardship and has put her grants at risk for next year. So besides clarity, and by clarity, what we're asking for is for staff and council to indicate what would you be willing to support. Is there a way by which we can still utilize that same parade route, especially given that now there is over a year's notice to plan for it, number one. And then number two, would the city council be willing to provide a letter of support explaining to the Arts Commission that any underspending on Ms. Golden's behalf because of this was due to the timing issue that came up? And then finally, how do we get these permits approved in a more timely manner to avoid this again? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Chief Kabinski.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro
Good
Tem
evening, sir.
Council. We're going to answer all of your questions in the
Assistant Chief Gerhart,
following
you come up too,
presentation.
sir.
I'll be presenting city staff who has had a part in this. This is a staff member, department presentation that's been put together to explain this entire situation at hand, and not only discuss the problem, but offer solutions for the future. As we are working on finding, there it is. Good to go. Thank you. Okay, to give you a little bit of background, let's start all the way from the beginning with regards to this specific request. The first part of any event, when it comes to any event that's held, is where does the funding come from? In the case of this applicant, this is the Arts Commission grant application, which was reviewed in June of 2022, originally submitted as a one-day event for June 17th, 2023. But this submission only reviews event for the eligibility of funding. This doesn't have to do with special event parade permits or things like that. And there were no details of the specifics of the event in the application. In early 2023, the application was changed to a two-day event for June 16th and 17th. And again, does not review the details of the event or require permits before the application is considered for funding. This is just the grant funding application part, and Ms. Tangley can speak on that if you have any additional questions. So then we go into the permitting process, which is addressed in section 25-157 of the ordinance. And once that funding is approved, now the organizer must submit for any applicable permits, and the parade permit gets addressed there. And it states the permit application must be submitted at least 21 days in advance of the scheduled event start date. The graphic on the bottom is just to give you a rundown of once it's submitted, what happens and where does it go. It goes to the city secretary who receives the application, and then each department that's effective has to provide feedback and a recommendation. Then the city secretary compiles all the feedback and the recommendations to provide to the city manager for a final decision. What is a parade that's defined? It's any concerted walk, column, march. Actually, I won't read that out loud to you, but the parade application stated that there was a parade route requested by the applicant to include W.S. Young, Elms Road, Little Nolan Road, and streets in a subdivision affecting over 300 homes. The parade time was on a Friday afternoon on a holiday weekend from 2 to 3:30, with closures needed from noon to 4 p.m. on W.S. Young and Elms Road. Those were concerns to us. So city staff reviewed the application throughout the week of April 17th. Police, Public Works, and OHSEM recommended denial. Fire was confused when the fire marshal's office reviews it because it was marked assembly and parade. And really, the fire marshal's office looks for assembly permits and things like that. So at the time, fire did not see any issues when it came to the assembly permit part of it. On May 15th, the assistant city manager requested that the denying departments meet with the applicant so we could discuss all of those concerns. So we met with the applicant on May 25th. That was as soon as possible date to bring all departments and the applicant together into the same room to talk about the application and the request for the permit. I think I could draw the graphic if you need for the route, but we've hit that route pretty clearly of what it would affect at what we would consider rush hour times on a Friday, again, holiday, when soldiers are getting out of Fort Hood for the holiday weekend as well. During the applicant meeting, the applicant gave an overview of the event, which differed from the one-page permit application that was originally submitted. And we discovered that during this meeting, this 2-unit or 3-unit trail ride, the Rough Rider horse unit, and the trailer with steel drum music had grown to be more than 5 units and included units with walking pedestrian groups. When specifically asked, it was, I don't know how many units we're going to have, but we want to have walkers as well. And so that raised a concern for the meeting group of fire, police, OHSEM, and the other city departments. So we discussed alternatives. Some of the alternatives discussed were moving to a downtown parade route, not the city route. It was the parade route used in downtown, which is much more conducive to pedestrian parades and something of this nature, not just a trail ride with a couple of horse-drawn or motorized type units. Moving to a park trail, or staying on the property and doing a walk around the property perimeter. And we were talking the perimeter of Special Events Center, rodeo. It's a very large footprint, as you know, with all the city-owned properties there. Some of the concerns, police department. The 2 officers that were needed to just lead and follow a unit, motorized unit, turned into 15 because we have to close off intersections, have to close off roadways for up to a 4-hour period. Elms and W.S. Young are higher speed zones. It would be next to pedestrians and slow-moving traffic. The proposal was to have 1 lane closed to have this parade while traffic still continued moving up and down Elms and W.S. Young, which was a safety concern. Public Works Department, the amount of road safety devices needed would be large. We would have to, essentially recommendation is to close the roads, which you know you can't do on a Friday at 2 o'clock on those main arterials. But the amount of cones and Public Works devices was pretty massive in order to accommodate this. Homeland Security Emergency Management had concerns with the amount of area blocked in by the parade and the duration that would cause other community members, high occupancy housing such as apartment units, to have restricted access. City facilities would be restricted on public businesses while roads are blocked, like the Fleet Transportation Building, the Solid Waste Building, the Civic and Conference Center. And then our busiest fire station also would have to vacate the station. The vehicles would have to sit outside of that parade route to be able to respond. They wouldn't be able to respond from inside of their station for that 4-hour period. So the reasons, the letter to the applicant. It's important to be clear that this was not the event planned at the KCCC that was originally planned. This was strictly for the parade permit and not permitting of the event that's taking place and KCCC property. And the letter to the applicant stated, reason number one, the location proposed to interrupt safe and orderly movement of other vehicular traffic. It also requires a greater number of police officers than are regularly scheduled. Sections 3, 4, and 6 would interfere with the movement of police, fire, and ambulance services in the city and to that portion of the city. Section 5 would interfere with necessary garbage collection due to the main fleet yard being blocked in as well. And so the alternatives were to affirm the city manager's denial of the permit or to reverse the city manager's denial and grant the application for a parade permit. And it's our recommendation that city council affirm the city manager's denial of the permit. But again, we talk about future improvements. How can we make this process better? A special events review committee, we have seen a large influx in the city of special events, not just in the downtown revitalization, but throughout the city. And there has to be a city contingency of department directors or liaisons that meet with the applicant well in advance to say, much like we do with a tenant build out when you apply for a permit to build your building. We meet with the group, the CPR group, and they say, yes, this will work, no, this doesn't fall in, and so that's a recommendation. We would recommend revising the current ordinance. The 21-day prior to event submission deadline for something as complex as this, that is short notice for a event organizer to have to now go back and make changes. So it should be pushed further out 100%. But the other side is, much like if you build a building in the city without a permit, you're going to be given a stop work order. So no matter whether you spent money or not prior to that permit being issued, you're responsible for making sure that you're falling within the guise of the permit. And then a dedicated staff member to coordinate special event permits at the city secretary's office. So city secretary's office can speak that they get lots of permits and applications, and they get stacked and then put into an order and sent out through the departments. Special events and coming from, and I know Chief Lopez can speak to it as well, special events in his previous organization can take up a lot of time, and they take expertise on the public works, fire, and police side that is outside of the city secretary's bandwidth or scope. And so getting that committee and then having somebody who meets with the applicant and then puts that applicant in front of all of the city departments to ask those questions, much like the CPR group for building permits. It's a time-intensive process that definitely includes more than one meeting with the applicant and the city staff. So those are recommendations for future improvements. I know that is a little bit more than the request for tonight on affirming the city manager's decision, but I would be remiss if we didn't come to you with solutions to a problem.
Thank you for that, Chief. Any Assistant Chief Gerhard or Mr. Perez, either one of y'all want to speak? Because I have a question. I don't know, Chief or anyone, and you can answer. And for the future, if they make this request in the future, will they be able to use W.S. Young?
I can speak pretty confidently, at least from the fire department side, and if there's any dissension behind me, but we don't feel W.S. Young or Elms are safe areas unless we completely close them down. To have any kind of an alternative where, and I can speak to the Rough Riders, they are very professional, but just this last parade that we had downtown, 2 horses acted up and had to be pulled out of the parade right at the start. So while they are professional and trained, we don't know what traffic going back and forth next to even highly trained, highly professional riders and horses can do, and the last thing we want to do is see a horse take off and cause injuries to anybody else. So it is our recommendation that W.S. Young and Elms are not considered as parade routes.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Gerhard? Good evening, sir. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor. Yeah, I could do no better than Chief Kabinski just did. I wholeheartedly endorse everything he said and all his recommendations. The W. Young and Elms Road, those are arterial streets. There's too much traffic. It will restrict access to the city. It will restrict our movement through the city for emergency services and just the general public's ability to move on those roads. And in particular, that time of day is one of the busiest times of day for traffic as well. All those coupled together was just a really, I don't say poorly timed event, it was just a bad timing event, a confluence of several different safety issues that came together in one.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Perez, do you have anything you would like to add, and any other department head? Mr. Reynolds, do you have anything you would like to say after Mr. Perez? Please come forward. Mr. Perez.
I would just echo what they said. Having worked in Dallas, Denver, and Seattle, when we have those types of parades, those large streets are completely shut down. And so, you know, the other part is particularly, we've been seeing a lot of permits lately that are impacting residential areas. So being able to go to those homeowners and say, sorry, we're going to block you in or keep you out from your house for a certain length of time is definitely a predicament to be in. So, you know, to organizers out there, we have this nice downtown area. We have businesses downtown. They would love business. They would love your event downtown. So working with our downtowns group on that is really helpful.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reynolds. Good evening, sir. Fine, sir.
I think it's just important to reiterate that this is nothing against the organization or the event. It's just that we have to think about public safety first. That's our first priority, period, is public safety. And during that time of the day being hot, all the stuff they just talked about, we just, after looking at this event, we just didn't feel it was safe. So public safety is number one, and that's what we have to stick to. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Chief Lopez, did you have anything, sir? For those that do not know, this is our new police chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, sir.
Yes, even though in theory I support the event, but it's simply a public safety issue. Something that we have to consider is that we have to consider several groups. We have to consider spectators that's going to be on the sidewalks. We have to consider the children on a trail ride that's going to probably be unsecured, and those wagons have been part of many trail rides in Houston. And, you know, we have to carefully plan them out. We have to consider our senior citizens. We also have to consider it's going to be 105 degrees on Friday afternoon. So that's going to be a big impact. So we got to deal with crowd, then we also got to deal with possible heat exhaustion for all the participants. And like Chief said, there's horses that I understand that they train, they're very professional rough riders, but we can't control what this animal are going to do, especially when they're playing steel drums. That might spook the animals. There's cars going by them. The only way to do this safely is to block off all the streets, but that's not a possibility. I recommend that if we have parades in the future, trail rides, we need to do them in a designated area on a Saturday or Sunday where there's less traffic. And we have to inform the public and the citizens that live in the area of what we're doing so we can shut down the areas. Because there's also impact on access to emergencies for the fire department and police personnel. They have to respond to any incident within that parade route. So the congestion and the traffic, I recommend that we not approve this parade.
Thank you, sir. Any other department head that participated in the decision process? All right, Ms. Golden. Ms. Brown. Ms. Golden, I think this is going to be a great event, and my question to you, was all of your questions answered from your perspective? What question did, Chief, we may need y'all assistance. What's your question, ma'am, that they did not answer?
What condition? May I, Mayor, please?
Do you have a problem with her speaking for you? Ms. Brown?
So I think specifically, a couple of things that we were looking for that we still need clarity on is specifically under what conditions would the council, first of all, be willing to support it? Because the council ultimately, even though Arts Commission only deals with the funding aspects, the council has the ability to give the direction on the public safety aspect and what areas they would be willing to support the public safety portion of it. Because the HOP funds, we also still do need to accentuate the KCCC, so how can we coordinate and tie that into it also so we're appropriately using the HOP funds? But most specifically, moving forward, in this, I think we might ask for also, could there be a separate meeting scheduled for not only Ms. Golden and the staff, but any other organizer who would like to have input on it to come up with a set of guidelines that could be standardized, and so that moving forward, we don't have this situation. And then, but we still do need to know what will the council support, what will the staff support for a trail ride?
Well, first of all, Ms. Golden, when it comes to funding First question is, Mr. Kagan and his staff, they're going to meet with you because I'm assuming you're going to have it again next year, correct? And the way moving forward, it was on the slide deck. What I will recommend to you, and I know the council will agree, you were denied the trail ride, and the funding that you have, I think you should get it back. That's just my perspective. I don't even know how the arts, that part work, if you don't go through with it, and Mr. Cagle, he can give his comment on it. But I do think that when this meeting is over tomorrow, this is something you're gonna do. W.S. Young is off the records, period. They made that clear tonight about that you just start preparing moving forward and talk to the staff about your funds and how you can be reimbursed once it was denied. I don't know if you can, I cannot, I can only speak for me as mayor. I would hope that would be refunded to you because when you found out about it. But ultimately, it's up to the council and what do they think about it. With that being said, Councilwoman Gonzalez. And you have to turn your camera on, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know what to stop with.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I just put the thing myself.
You froze.
Yeah, one moment, please. Sorry. Go ahead, and you've got another question, madam. You can work on that one. I'll
Okay, I come back to you. Keep your hand up so I won't
Thank you.
forget. Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Sagara.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I think the Chief Kaminsky answered a lot of questions, because my main concern is, because I've seen this, up here as a council member before, and I hate for citizens to go through this whole process, and then at the last minute, something changes, and I think that we just need, and I agree with Mrs. Brown, we just need to be clarity to that, and I understand sometimes things change, and I think it looks like on this presentation, something had changed to trigger that, and we don't know that, so a lot of times, I do get those calls, and it's like, they changed this at last minute, and we've had people that have invited, people that did their travel plans, so as much as we can try to avoid it and make this as clear as possible, I think that's, from us, from my perspective as a city, is something that we need to try to make sure that we work on. And as far as W.S. Young, I don't think that, I'm agree with that should not be a parade route. I was going to make mention of the spectators, and Chief Lopez brought that up, but the other aspect of it is the spectators. We're looking at this great, Rough Riders, and it's such a big attraction that you're going to see people looking for all places just to park and run across the street and all that. And so that's to me, that's a dangerous place. It's a hazard. So, I think that we just need to figure out a way to make it happen. And I'm with you. I'm for you. I'm support you. If you need something for next year, I'm okay with that if we can work something out with the staff. But, for figuring out a way to make a good event next year. But I think that as a council member, I'm not in support of having that parade. So I don't know how much discussion we still need to do on this.
We still have some more council members that would like to speak. Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Sagara. Going back to you, Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Thank you. Just very briefly, Ms. Brown asked the question. I would completely support the events that the police, fire staff have suggested moving forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say what Councilwoman Gonzalez suggested is I believe Chief Kabinski gave a thorough explanation, of staff's point of view on all this conversation. I think something can be put together to make the process easier and more clear. I don't think it's responsible for council to give a blanket approval for a certain route, because every event is going to be different. Not every event's going to have horses. Not every event's going to have 30 trailers, or some may have one, some may have 10. so I think it's difficult, and it wouldn't be prudent to do some kind of blanket and say, well, this works for everything, because it's almost a case-by-case basis where you have to need to sit down, look at the event, what are you asking for, and how can we get you to where you want to be in a safe manner. So I do really like the chief's recommendation, and hopefully we can do that and come up with something that, moving into your 2024 event, it's a lot clearer and the process is more manageable and easier to navigate for you. So that would be my wish, at least. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez. So, Council, I would just like a consent that Ms. Golden get with Mr. Cagle, and we can work out her future plans way far in advance, and also any funding and how it would work with the Art Commission. We won't be able to solve that right now because we don't have all the information, how to work with that. But you would work with Mr. Cagle, call, set up a date. We will follow up on it, trust me, to ensure that this has been resolved for 2024 on how we can go forward. And the funding that you have for this year that you may lose or not, we don't have that information. And I don't want to make you a promise that, like someone made a promise that you could do it at the Arts Commission meeting, and then when you find out from the police officer, fire department, public works, emergency management, you cannot do it. So that's the same thing you're asking us to do right now, and I don't feel comfortable doing it, and I know the council don't, because you've been through enough from, having to change your event. So we're testing you, Mr. Kagan, if the council agree with me that she can get with you and y'all work this out for 2024, and anything to do with Arts Commission right now today, he would have that information and email you an answer if that's possible or not. Is that okay with you, Ms. Golden?
That's fine. In concluding, the only thing
Yes,
I'd like
ma'am.
to say is that moving forward, I would like for the city to kind of like assist and help sponsoring the event besides just the Art Commission, because if they're telling me, depending on what the Arts Commission is given, is limited funding, then if they're saying I have to have 25 police officers, that's going to take up a bulk of the funding.
Yes, ma'am.
So that, and then it'll take away from the quality of what
But you
we're
may
trying-
not need 25 because W.S. Young and AMS is off limit. It may be another location you may have it at, and you may not need 25. So that's why we cannot say now, because we don't know what your plans are for 2024. And that's one reason I don't think it would be productive if we even get in discussion about 2024, because we don't know. So if the council's okay with her working with Mr. Cagle to find those answers out with her.
Well, Mayor, I was going to ask if you needed some kind of direction
Yes,
here,
sir.
because I was going to make I don't know if it's a motion or direction to support
Right.
the staff's recommendation.
Right, well, the council, that is, I will agree with you, but I also don't want her to leave here. She has questions and concerns about 2024. It would make this appeal, what's the purpose of it? We have to hear her, and we have to give her back some kind of answer to the questions that we cannot answer now. I agree with the consent with the staff, but I also think we should, the council, if you don't mind, Mr. Cagle's not, he don't have a problem with working with her, just her, since she hosted it, and help her with these answers. Yes, ma'am.
With the Arts Commission, we have a,
He's not finished. I didn't see his name. He's still up there. I apologize. Councilmember Sagara, I apologize.
No, I was just going to see if I can get a second, make a motion that we recommend that we approve the staff's recommendation.
second.
And I'll even add with the mayor, just work with her for next year. So that's my recommendation and my motion of direction.
Seconding motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
You just raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Councilwoman Gonzalez? Okay, so that's 6.
I second that.
Thank you. That's 5 council members that agree. Ma'am, do you have anything else, or was that your closing remarks? Are you finished? Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Chief Kabinski, I have one question for you. in part of this process, can you just assure that all that information, and if you get her address, to give her the information that this is why, whatever, I know you gave that, but, whatever way we can assist.
While the current ordinance states that it's 21 days in advance, we already have received permit applications for events for 2024. So this applicant can put her application in and request that permit now, and we can have a year to work with her. And even if she doesn't get the funding from the Arts Commission, there's no harm, no foul. We're committed to work when you file for that permit. So now would be the best time to submit that permit for 2024.
Yes, sir, and I thank you, Chief Lopez, Assistant Chief Gerhard, Mr. Reynolds, and also Mr. Perez, all of y'all coming together as a team to make this happen and providing this slide deck. Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, consent agenda.
LMN 23011, consider minutes of regular city council meeting of May 9th, 2023. LMN 23012, consider minutes of special city council meeting of May 16th, 2023 at 4:00 p.m. LMN 23013, consider minutes of special city council meeting of May 16th, 2023 at 5:00 p.m. RS 23091, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the procurement of fleet parts from Heil of Texas in an amount not to exceed $132,000. RS 23092, consider a memorandum resolution authorizing the procurement of 56 computers, mobile data terminals for police vehicles fully equipped with emergency equipment through the Texas Department of Information Resources and the Texas Buy Board for a total cost in the amount of $217,390.33.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Sagara.
I second that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Sagara. All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Councilwoman Gonzalez? Yes, ma'am. Well, the motion passed 5-0. Councilmember Board did not vote on this item, but he is here. Resolutions.
RS 23080, consider a memorandum resolution appointing members to the Bond Advisory Committee.
Yes, Mayor and Council, you have seen this before, and we have two new names tonight. James Yates from Councilmember Cobb in District 3, and Leslie Hinkle, I believe, was submitted as the name for the entire council. And I think Councilmember Solomon, do you have a name for us tonight? Okay. Well, so what we could do, if you'd like, is to add the two names of James Yates and Leslie Hinkle to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Cagle. Can I get a motion to approve the names that he stated and that Mr. Solomon will have his name to Mr. Cagle by the end of tomorrow? Yes, sir. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor, I move to approve Mr. Yates and Ms. Hinkle.
And that would be RS-23-8080. Councilmember Alvarez.
I second that appointment, Mayor.
Thank you. Madam City Attorney.
Thank you. If I could just clarify, so you've just stated the two names, but you're appointing the entire committee.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to confirm, is that the motion, then you're appointing all the names, not just the two that were mentioned?
Yes, ma'am. That's when she stated that. I went back and read out the resolution RS-23-080, so there will not be any misunderstanding, even though she said two names. I read well, please just make that motion again. It saves
Madam
time.
Mayor, I move to approve the nominees for the 23080.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Alvarez.
I would second the appointment of all the members stated in RS 23-080.
Thank you. All in favor,
Madam Mayor, I
yes?
have my
Oh,
button pushed.
Yes, sir. You have a comment?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
I was obviously out. Can we go over the names just briefly?
Yes,
For my
sir.
sake, please. Thank you.
We had Jimmy Towers, Gregory Moore, James Yates, Broccoli Moore, Tyrone McLaurin, Matthew Yao, and Leslie Hinkle.
Very good. Thank you.
All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Okay, so show of hand. Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez. Motion carries 6-0. Yes, ma'am. Public hearings.
PH 23036. Hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance requested by J. Brez LLC, Series B, Flume Number 23-02, to amend the comprehensive plan's future land map from a neighborhood commercial place type designation to an industrial place type designation for approximately 10.56 acres, being part of the Killeen Area Investment Corp. Industrial Tract Lot Point Tract D and part of the J.J. Roberts Survey. Abstract number 731. The property is locally addressed as 5200 East Veterans Memorial Boulevard, Killeen, Texas. The caption of the ordinance reads, "An ordinance amending the comprehensive plan's future land use map to change approximately 10.56 acres, being 1 acre, out of the J.J. Roberts Survey, abstract number 73, and 9.56 acres out of the Killeen Area Investment Corp. Industrial Tract, Tract D, from a neighborhood commercial designation to an industrial designation, providing a severability clause, providing a savings clause, providing for the repeal of conflicting provisions, providing for a publication, and an effective date."
Thank you, council. Mr. Rivera, council went over this last week. Do you want him to go over it again? All right. Is the applicant here? Ma'am, would you like to speak? Okay. Open up public hearing. I'm closing public hearing. Can I get a motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve. I move to approve PH 23036.
Councilmember Boyd.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, yes? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Gonzalez, did you have anything you want to say?
No, ma'am, I was going to second that motion. Thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I'll look up next time. I apologize. All in favor, yes. I'll get you next time, I promise. All opposed, no. Will you raise your hand so she can stay up there if you don't mind, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion carries unanimously. And just know the second will be done by Councilwoman Gonzalez for the next one, because I didn't see her hand up. You ready, Madam Secretary?
Yes, ma'am. PH 23037. Hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance requested by Franklin Land Associates, LLC, on behalf of Whitus Investments, LTD, case number Z23-02, to rezone approximately 1.098 acres out of the C.T. Berlin Survey, abstract number 137, from R1 Single Family Residential District to B3 Local Business District. The property is located on the east right-of-way of East Tremere Road and north of Andalusia Lane, Killeen, Texas. The caption of the ordinance reads, "An ordinance amending the City of Killeen zoning ordinance by changing the zoning of approximately 1.098 acres out of the C.T. Berlin Survey, abstract number 137, from R1 Single Family Residential District to B3 Local Business District. providing a savings clause, providing for the repeal of conflicting provisions, providing for an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. Council, Mr. Rivera went over these slides last week. Do you want him to go back over? No. All right, thank you. Is the applicant here? If he or she is here, sir, would you like to speak? If, okay, sir, thank you. Public hearing is open. Melissa Brown. Welcome back. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Council. I promise not to take the floor this time. Believe it or not, I'm tired of talking. So, I'm sorry. No, I just want to say, I came up and I spoke about this when the public hearing happened for the flume request, and I still feel like that this is not an appropriate area for another Dollar General store. If I drop a pin on Google Maps right where this is supposed to be, and I do a search for Dollar General within a 5-mile radius, I get 12 of them. If you add in the Family Dollars, you get exponentially more. This is going to increase traffic, potentially increase litter into the creek that's right next door to it. Also, there is a petition that had been circulated that I don't think has had the opportunity to get back to the development department yet. And so my only request this time would at least be that the council table this decision until that petition be able to be submitted to the development director for consideration for the percentage of land that's represented. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vince Klein. Good evening, sir. You have 4 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, council members. I wanted to speak about this a little bit. I'm a property owner whose property is adjacent to this proposed area. Unfortunately, I was out of town for work last week. I was not able to come and speak any. And speaking with my neighbors and other members of the community, or the neighborhood that I live in, this is something that's been widely not, let's just say it's been a negative discussions about this within the community. This is a protected creek area. This was public space that was kind of set up for being, public land, park space, maybe some trails or something in the future. It's a flood zone. It also, the way to access this property is along this roadway. This property that's being discussed being put in, this Dollar General would block that access for anybody who would want to be able to go back to the public space that's there. Another thing I wanted to make sure was that this council was aware of is a petition that has gone out. It's on change.org, and there is if you search the case number, the Z23-02, there is a stop rezoning land on East Tremere and Killeen for commercial use. There are 73 signatures. These are people that are property owners that border this, and also other people in the neighborhood that this would be affecting. This is my first time to come up and speak to the city council, so I'm not really sure the right way for these types of things to be presented to the city council. Excuse me. And I think there's just a disconnect in the community being able to communicate that to both the city council and the zoning and district commission. I believe that's the right name. As I mentioned, in speaking with all of my neighbors and other people in the community, this is not something that is desirable for our neighborhood, and at least with something that will be in the neighborhood of, like, if you look at, depending on how this gets built out, 15 to 20 homes, this would be in their backyard, basically, this Dollar General. So that's going to be a negative impact on property values. This is an area where I have 3 boys that go out and play in this area that would not be able to do that, be a different dynamic with a Dollar General in this space. So I think there's maybe just a little disconnect in how the community is able to bring their concerns up. I know a lot of us have jobs and whatnot that make it difficult for us to be here during the very specific times. As I mentioned, I was not able to be here last week, and that was something that I was hoping to be able to do. Yeah, I don't know. If I guess my question would be, if could be answered, is for something like a petition what is the proper way to present that to the council?
Well, sir, it's on the agenda to vote on it tonight, so that would have taken place prior to this night. And you could have gone to our planning and zoning meeting and voice your concerns there, because they do have public hearing. And also the city council, it's been on the agenda from last week now to today, that's a whole week. They also sent out for, and I'm gonna call Mr. Rebel when you finish, and have him to explain more in details why this decision was made. But the process took place when this first came to planning and zoning, that's been months ago. So,
Yes, I was at that planning and zoning meeting at least, and of the 5 voting members that were there, 2 voted against and 3 voted for, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
yes, sir. And thank you. So I can close public hearing, and I can call Mr. Rebel up before we vote. Mr. Rebel, public hearing closed. Could you please come up and for me and the council and also the residents, why did the city staff decide to move in this direction? And I forgot how many complaints. Did we have any complaints turned in? And if so, could you please explain?
Sure.
Thank you. And welcome.
Yes, ma'am, and it may be helpful to call up the presentation, but if not.
You can, if you cannot.
Sure. Well, we sent out notification, and the notification is sent out to all of the residents that's affected within the 200-foot and the 400-foot boundary for the area where the rezoning request is. That was about 40-plus notifications, I believe. And I'll just-
Yes, sir.
42.
42.
42 notifications. The notification boundaries are actually shown there on the map there, the 200 and the 400 foot. So when that notification is received, there's also a form on that notification where a person can fill out that form and submit it back to our department to make us aware if they have an issue, if they in support of the request, or if they have an issue with it. That process did happen, and we did receive 3 responses back. And the 3 responses that we received were associated with properties there. Those 3, the 3 in blue on the map there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so proper notification has been done. Let's see. I do want to point out on this map here, and I'll just deal with the colors. So the properties that I mentioned are here to the south, if you will. And so your orange color represents that 100-foot power company right-of-way, and that's currently an open space that's directly behind these properties here, and that's probably the space that's being referred to as quote-unquote public space, but it's actually on-core power right-of-way.
Could you speak up and say that again? About the public
It's
space?
right-of-way, it's 100-foot right-of-way for the power company.
Okay, so it's not public space?
No.
Okay.
And then the property that's shown in the purple or the lavender color represents the portion of the parcel or property that's located in the floodplain. And then that is shown in the green color represents the portion of the property that's neither in power company right-of-way or in the floodplain. And that green is where the building footprint would be. So the intent is to build the structure outside of the floodplain and outside of the power company right-of-way. The rezoning request is really to rezone this portion of the property here that is currently R1 to B3, such that it matches the current B3 zoning for this portion of the property.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, do you have a question? Okay.
No, ma'am, I do not.
All right. Thank you. Council member Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Revelle, there's a map in here in the presentation, and I believe that we have already approved the zoning requests for the first half of this property, have we not?
There was
Previously?
Yes, there was yes, some time ago. There was a zoning request that was approved.
So they can already move forward on the first half, regardless of what we do on this back half.
The first half of the property, I think, is 170 feet. That's actually has the B3 zoning. The applicant can speak to this more, but they would like to have this entire.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is, if we turn down this request today, that front part is still B3. Someone
Yes.
could come build anything allowed in B3 there.
You're correct.
Without our consent already.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, and that was
Okay.
in place for quite some time.
All right, and so the 100-foot TPNL easement that's directly adjacent to the homes right there, that's a no-touch, basically going to be a buffer. And
Yes.
then the store, and then
Yes,
the
that'll be the store.
the protected floodplain.
Yes.
Gotcha. So this would essentially, the three homes that are there in that cul-de-sac there at the bottom that directly abut that TPNL easement would be the only three homes affected, but they would have a 100-foot buffer.
Yes, that's not going anywhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Councilmember Cigar.
I think you just answered my question, because I was looking at those three homes, and my question is, how far away are they from the potential building? But you answered it's going to be a 100-foot buffer, because looking at the picture, it looks like they're right across the street. And I say, that wouldn't be nice having a
Sure.
right across the street. But when you look at the map, you can see that it's further around, because it's a real nice area. And I can sympathize with the resident, because it's a beautiful area out there. And you don't want anything that is going to mess that area up. The home values are high. I run by that route all the time, on Stagecoach and all that. So it's got beautiful sidewalks and stuff. And there's like a Mickey's gas station right there on the corner too, between and I know that's B3 or something, a little bit down the road. But as long as there's a buffer there, I think we'll be okay.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Solomon.
I think you answered my question with the current land. He was going to build that anyway. He wanted, from what I understand from the last workshop, he just wanted to, he needed to extend it, or was this, in terms of the building, could he build just on that first part?
So and let me see, I think I've
'Cause you
got a
mentioned-
map to clarify that. It's, so on this particular map here, that red, the red rectangle, if you will,
Right.
is currently zone B3. And so as Councilman Alvarez was saying,
My question is, when you presented to us at the last workshop, you said he needed that to, he wanted to extend, the property owner wanted to extend that to extend his building?
well, for this particular development request, yes, they're seeking to rezone that portion in the blue box to allow to move forward with the development project that's currently being
I see.
considered. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, council, what is your pleasure? Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I make a
Yes, sir.
motion to approve
PH-23-037.
PH-20-037. Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Gonzalez. Ma'am? Can you pop on?
I second.
Yes, ma'am.
I second that, madam. Thank you.
You're welcome. All in favor, yes. All opposed, no. Councilwoman Gonzalez. We have to do Councilwoman Gonzalez. I think we lost her. So-
I'm up, ma'am. My camera.
Is that a yes?
Yes, ma'am, that is a
Okay,
yes. I
so-
can see you all. Uh-huh.
So it's 5-1 with Councilwoman Cobb in opposition. Councilmember Alvarez, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mayor.
Councilman Boyd,
Second.
all in favor, yes, all opposed, no. Oh, yes, everybody, yes. Okay, meeting adjourned.